It's Locked On Giants Live with Traina, Taina, and Dog. Pull up a chair and settle in as we talk Giants training camp and preseason and take your questions. All of that coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to a special edition of Locked On Giants podcast. It is Locked On Giants Live. You got Traina, Taina, and Dog. We are here. We are pumped. We are ready to talk Giants football. Guys, how you doing?
I'm excited. BadDog, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, great. Someday, football's here. Yankees stink. Go Giants.
I was not going to mention the Yankees. I said, don't mention the Yankees because I didn't want to get you in a foul mood. You brought it up.
Yeah, and same thing for me. Don't bring up the Mets. They've been awful this year. I think we're both.
God. I couldn't believe that score the other day.
Oh, my God.
Smokes.
Oh, my God. But I think we're both, dying for football to start.
Yes.
And it's almost here. We're finally going to have some things to really talk about. We don't have to talk about is Daniel Jones a top 10 quarterback. We're going to get to see it. I'm sick of the offseason banter. I want to see them on the field. I'm at that point now where I'm just itching for regular season football. I can't wait for it to get going. Yeah, I can't wait.
It is coming.
I gotta admit, though, I rather enjoy ripping some of the analysts on ESPN. I have kind of fun. I have fun with it. I do, because they deserve it. They deserve to feel my wrath for some of the stuff that they say about our Giants. Listen,
not for nothing. I don't mean to sound critical, but how can you critique if you're not in the building, if you're not there every day?
You can't. That's what I always laugh at, Pat. That's what I always laugh at, Pat. I'm not even talking about analysts, just people on Twitter, fans, analysts, whoever, people who think they know more than the people that are in the building. I laugh at it. I mean, these guys have firsthand experience with this guy. They didn't draft the guy. They inherited the guy. They signed off on giving him $40 million. There's something that they see in the kid. And I'm going to trust their opinion over some Joe Schmo on Twitter or some analyst trying to make hot takes on Fox Sports.
Well, we're going to talk about all that. We've got plenty to talk about, God knows. We'll take questions a little later on in the program. So a big shout out to everybody who's here tonight, my everydayers, newcomers, whoever you are. Thank you so much. We're all family here. So just pull up a chair, relax. Hope you've got your drink. I know I got my water. I know, Dog, you've got your soda.
You got
your coffee. So let's do this, guys. So I don't know. You guys haven't been to training camp, I don't think, right? But you've been following
I haven't gotten a chance to make it. I didn't get a chance this year, yeah.
Okay. Well, Giants, I've been at most of the practices. I missed unfortunately yesterday's because I got a flat tire of all days, right? That was a padded practice, although they did running. But anyway, Daniel Jones, my God, guys, Can we talk about Daniel Jones and how, it's funny. You go back to the spring and everybody was, the reporters are like, oh my God, is Daniel Jones any different than what he was? And he's still the same hard worker, same personality. But tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, and you guys are obviously going to go off with clips and whatnot, but do you not see a little bit of a swagger to Daniel Jones's, step? Like almost like he's more confident, more, what's the word I want? I don't want to say like guns, just confident is the best.
Yeah, no, you can see it even in the way, when I've watched the video clips in terms of his press conferences, you could just tell he's still, a little bit reserved because that's who he is. And that's the way I want him to be. I don't want him to be somebody who he's not. It was the same thing with Eli Manning. I used to get pissed at people when they used to make fun of his personality. That's Eli. As long as the guy produces on the field, I'm all about it. The all shucks mentality, everything else. But you can tell he's feeling himself a little bit. You could tell he's coming a little bit out of his shell. I definitely see that this year in the way that, he's talked to the media. He definitely seems like he's expressing himself a little bit more. I remember you guys at a press conference, obviously, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he had a response, something along the lines of, well, that's for the guys at ESPN to decide. And it was kind of like throwing a little bit of shade at the ESPNs of the world. It made me smile a little bit. So you can tell he's got a little bit of an edge to him this year. I think he's got something to prove.
It's a quiet confidence. You know, he's not boisterous. He's not like me, where he's going to scream at the top of his lungs.
Nobody's like you, dog.
Oh, thank God.
You're an original.
My son, we're making a part 2. That sequel's in the works, and anybody that's seen some of my live streams, Chris knows when my son comes down here, he tends to steal the show. He's a little ham and egger sometimes. But no, there's definitely, and Patty, I think this goes back to last year. I really do. I will consistently, if Daniel Jones continues to, get better and better, he's on an ascension, and he continues to get better, which I think he will. I'm always going to go back to game 1 against Tennessee when he threw the really bad interception in the end zone, and Daboll went over and was animated. I don't know what Daboll said to him, but he was animated. Giants are down 13-0 halftime. I'm thinking, here we go. Same old Giants. Nothing's changed. Daniel Jones could have hung his head. Oh, woe is me. Everybody hates me. What does he do? He takes it in stride. He goes out there. He leads the Giants to, a victory. The first time they'd been over 500 any day in 5 years. And as the Giants were able to pull these games off and win these games at the end, I think that really breeded confidence in Daniel Jones and the team. Dave Gettleman always talked about, we got to get the culture. And I've been on record. I've said this many times. You can ask the chat, knows me, hashtag WBC, winning builds culture. When a team becomes confident, when you start winning games, you start going, we've been here before. We know we're going to win. We have confidence. Confidence goes a long way. It's something that cannot be taught. This is something that worried me about Daniel Jones when I was a naysayer. I said, I don't think he can do it. I don't think he's confident enough. I don't think he believes in himself enough. And the problem was not that Daniel Jones didn't believe in himself. I think he didn't believe in the coaches. And I think he believes in Daboll now. And you see a totally different Daniel Jones. When the Giants were losing all these games, it was like, okay, how are we going to blow this one? What's going to happen now? What bad can happen? It's amazing the turnaround in one season. And people can say Daniel Jones is no good. He's a bottom-tier quarterback, whatever they want to say. Saquon Barkley. I love when people say they should have tagged Jones and signed Barkley to a long-term deal. Those people don't understand. If you tagged the Jones, you couldn't have signed Barkley anyway. You'd have no money because you can't maneuver $32 million around if he's on the tag.
Yeah.
There's just a difference about Jones. He commands respect in the huddle. He's standing a little bit taller, and I think it's because he has belief in the system. And I believe that has led his teammates to believe in him. And you're going to see a damn good football team this year. I don't think we're going to win 13 games or anything. Our schedule's really tough. But this team's going to be better than it was last year. And the future's bright. I'm pumped if you can't tell, guys.
I think you hit it on the head with year 2 in the scheme. That to me is I think the thing I'm most excited about for Daniel Jones this year. I know it. You look historically, you could, no matter the level of the quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, year 2 in the scheme in Tennessee when he went there, the guy threw for 33 touchdowns and 7 picks. Looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback. Jared Goff last year 2 in the scheme, elevated by 11 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, year 2 in the scheme. Aaron Rodgers, year 2 in the scheme with LaFleur. Matt Ryan wins the MVP, year 2 in the scheme with the Atlanta Falcons, right? Like, year 2 in this offense, when you have a play caller as good as Brian Daboll, and you have the weapons that have improved on this team going from a XFL roster at the skill positions to at least an NFL roster. You think about what they're going to be able to do against these opposing defenses. I think Dan Jones is in for a big year. I'm not scared to say it. I've said it countless times. I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP, but I think you're going to end this year saying, I have to start giving this guy respect, whether you're a hater or not. I think he's going to have a big year. And I think the second year in the offense with this coaching staff has as much to do with it as anything else.
Yeah, but here's the one thing I'm worried about, guys, if I'm being totally honest with you. The offensive line not being settled.
That's
I am very concerned. I mean, here we are. We've got, 3 more weeks or so until the opening day. That offensive line is still not settled. Evan Neal, he was just cleared from the concussion protocol today to resume practicing. He had been, he got back on August 4th. And today's August 16th, so that's 12 days he missed. All right. The left guard situation, we still don't know who the guy's going to be. Is it going to be a rotation, or is it going to be Bredesen, or is it going to be Azudu? They're moving guys around over at right guard. Is it going to be Glowinski or Bredesen or somebody else? The fact that that offensive line is not yet settled, if I'm being totally honest with you, that's right now is my biggest concern.
It should
about
be.
the success.
Especially the
It's-
depth. The depth of the O-line. I mean, again, it's one preseason game. I'm not the sky's not falling.
Right.
Wow, when you watch what happened with Cunningham and Wyatt out there, it's like they had Eric Gray had no
Wyatt
chance.
was out of position, to be fair to him.
Yeah, I
Cunningham, no excuse.
What surprised me though is when I went on Twitter after the game and I saw everybody acting surprised about the depth. Our offensive line starters are bad. So what do you think the depth's going to look like? So I wasn't shocked.
They were missing
go ahead.
Phillips. Phillips was missing.
He was
Matt
missing.
Peart,
Yeah.
Was also, he was okay when he was in there, but
Yeah.
they were so down on bodies because of the injuries. They had to put Wyatt out of position. Wyatt's a guard; he's not a tackle. But Cunningham, holy smokes!
Yeah, Cunningham. The one play that Chris and I laughed at, Cunningham must have forgot the snap count because he's.
I know.
And the guy came off the edge. I'm like, how does that happen? He
was
told
amazing.
because everybody else he was down there.
Yeah,
Yep.
we need Neal out there this week. We need to get him back out there.
And here's the other thing, I don't want to incite panic here, but when I watched Neal in practice before he got dinged, there were times when I questioned whether he was actually comfortable in his stance. Like, you expect a guy to get into his stance and just kind of sit there and be set and ready to move. I saw a little bit of fidgeting, and that until everything got set. You know what I mean? Like he was fidgeting a little bit, like, okay, maybe I'm not, I'm too high, maybe I'm too low. So the 12 days that he missed, I'm hoping that he catches up today. Now, there was a report. I wasn't at practice today. I had to take care of something, I had some personal things to do, but I know there was a report that came out. I think Jordan Renaud put it out.
Yeah.
That his ankles was taped up. And I'm here to tell you, I looked into that. I asked somebody if did they know of anything with Neal's ankle? And the person told me, look, they were practicing inside the field house today. This was really the first time Neal was playing inside the field house. Sometimes guys will tape their feet up a little differently playing on grass versus on the turf. So he said, as far as he knew, there was nothing wrong with Neal's ankle.
Okay.
I mean, he hasn't done anything. He's been limited the last 12 days. When would he have had time to have an ankle injury?
Yeah.
So
hopefully, I mean, we need him, especially after you saw the depth last week. We need him. So that's huge. And I agree with you. I mean, it's the same thing every year. We sound like broken records because BadDog, me, you, we all say it every year, but it's the truth. What's going to make it or break this offense this year is the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think we could find ways to put forth at least a solid offense if the offensive line struggles? Yes, because of our play callers, because of Jones' second year in the scheme. But if we want this offense to elevate and become a top 10 offense in the NFL, the offensive line has to be up to snuff. It has to be at least close to an average offensive line in the league. And there's no doubt about it. People don't want to admit that think, football's played like 7-on-7. That's not the way the game is played. The game's won in the trenches. It always will be. That's the way the game of football is played. So, yeah, I agree with you. That is our biggest key to the season, and it will be the biggest key to our season until such time we go into a year like the Eagles, where going into the year, yeah, we got a top 5 O-line. We're good to go. We don't even have to think about that. Until we get to that point, that's always going to be the biggest key.
Now,
I'll tell you what, that offensive line is going to get a test right out of the gate against Dallas. We
saw
like
Dallas. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up, Dog, because Wink has been throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at that offensive line, particularly at Schmitz. Blitzes, fancy stuff. He has been throwing everything at him because you don't think for a second that Dan Quinn of the Cowboys is going to do the same thing to the kid.
Oh, they're bringing him.
So get him stuff now.
Can Wink throw a Micah Parsons at him? That's the problem.
Didn't Micah Parsons get injured? I saw where he has a foot injury or something like
if he
that.
wants to take off week 1, by all means.
It's a long season. If Micah Parsons needs to sit,
by all means, Micah. You got 16 more games. Take a rest.
Relax.
But I don't know. I mean, I just saw something over on the Cowboys Maven site that maybe he might be questionable for week 1. I don't know. It's still early, but I did see he had some kind of. I don't think Micah will miss that game. Sunday Night Football. I can't see him
No,
missing it. But
I
but the
no,
point
not at
being-
all.
The point being, just getting back to Schmitz, is they have thrown everything at this kid, and he's very unflappable. He's got such a great disposition. Nothing seems to bother him, and you know what? He's tenacious in there.
I like
You
him.
know, I've seen him give a little extra push here and there after the whistle. Just I love what I see from this kid. I really do. And, I was kidding with him the other day. I called him Bart Jr. because, I think I've told you that he reminds me of Bart Oates.
I can see that.
In the resemblance.
I
And
can
plus
see
Bart
that.
Oates was a pretty good center.
He
So,
was.
And he takes it in stride. He's cool with it. But I just absolutely love what I have seen from this kid. So mature. I mean, I know he's a little older than most rookies, but so mature and so unflappable. He doesn't get, some guys will just be like, oh my God, if they get beat or they see something. Not this kid. Cool as ice.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you another kid who's not getting a lot of buzz. When I got a chance to watch back, some of the film breakdowns that everybody does on Twitter, Jordan Riley
Yes.
impressed me for a 7th round pick. That guy, he looked pretty good for an interior defensive lineman, especially a guy that's going to be a depth piece. Like, that guy looks like he has some talent to him for a guy that you got as late as we did in the draft.
Patty, let me ask you this, Patty. I kind of not really off subject, but something a little different. Do you understand this? I wanted to do a video on this, and I just never did, and I'm probably not going to have time to do it. I don't understand. Again, PFF is what it is. You take it with a grain of salt. I don't really understand any of these ranking systems, power rankings. It's, from I don't know who makes these things. So, they had PFF did the top 5 offensive guys for the Giants for the preseason game against the Lions. Then they had the bottom 5 guys. And the 5th worst guy, I forgot who it was. He was ranked at like 51.5 was his PFF rating. Now, everything I read and everything that I saw, and again, I'm just a fan, so whatever. It's just what I see. I'm not analytical, but I don't understand blocking schemes, and I'm not trying to break down film. I saw JMS was rated at 53.5, and I'm thinking to myself, everybody said that he was great. And I'm like, how is that? How is his rating of 53? And on the flip side, I saw a lot of people said Micah McFadden missed a lot of tackles. He didn't play well. He didn't do this, do that. He had a 90 PFF rating. So I'm confused. I'm missing something.
The PFF
You're not
system.
listening. You know what, dog? PFF, I respect the work they do. Some of their stats are very useful. Their grades, however, I'm sorry, I have no use for them. Very little use for them because they don't know the blocking scheme. They're just going off of what they see. And do you know how many times they'll say, oh, Adoree Jackson blew a coverage, and then I'll go to Adoree and I'll say, hey, Adoree, did you blow this coverage? And I'll say, no, it wasn't me. It was so and so. You don't know the assignments. It's the same thing with the offensive line. It might look like that, Andrew Thomas gave up a sack when in fact it might have been the running back that gave up the sack. You know what I'm saying? So I take the grades with a grain of salt. And for what it's worth, I thought Schmitz played really well. All things considered, I think he had 11 snaps, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. And Micah McFadden, I don't think he played that badly either. I mean, he had the one stop. I think he had an assisted tackle for 2. The run went for 2 yards, which constitutes a stop in PFF land. And I don't know. I just don't go by the grades. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just know you understood.
I go by the eye. No, I don't. And to this day, and I've asked them too. I've asked them. I said, "How are you guys coming up with this?" And they wrote out they have an explanation on their site. And I'm like, "But you guys don't know the line calls and the assignments and stuff like that. So how can you grade somebody and say that this guy missed an assignment when in fact it might be somebody else?"
Yeah,
I didn't get it. That's why I figured I figured you would know more than I would.
No, I wish I had an answer.
The JMS one confused me. I just
more and more I find Pro Football References stats to be a little, because I think those are the stats the NFL uses, if I'm not mistaken. So the NFL's got a whole stat package. It's really neat. There's this. The media gets access to this. It's live game coverage, and the stats are really detailed. I mean, we're talking yards after the catch, we're talking direction. They got some great charts and stuff like that. And it's just so much. I've been using that and also Pro Football Reference a little bit more than Pro Football Focus. I mean, I still use PFF, but I just, I've used that. I've used Jesus, NFL Jesus, the stats over there, which are also official league stats. So, it's I guess it's a matter of opinion. I don't put a whole lot of stock in grades, power rankings and stuff like that. Look, I write about it, power rankings every week because it's an article and it's also fun to say, oh my God, how could you put the Giants below, the Washington Commanders or whatever, so it makes for a fun, piece. But yeah, that other stuff, I could do without.
Another thing I wanted to ask you real quick. Darian Beavers did not play. Was that coach's decision? Is he still nursing the ACL from last year?
I think they wanted to. Yeah, my understanding is they wanted to take a look at McFadden. Okay. And also, it was also, Beavers had been getting a lot of snaps, so that might have been like a rest day for him.
He's been running with the first team. I know that.
They both have. But Wink said this past week that McFadden is kind of in the lead, and I can see why. I mean, I can see why.
I thought he was in the lead before training camp started, just based off what we heard at OTAs. Right. And then it seemed like Beavers took the lead again. But I've thought for a while, I think it's going to be McFadden because he fits Wink's team so well in terms of being a blitzer. That's when we draft him. That's all they said about him. He's a great blitzer at the middle linebacker position, and Wink wants that, especially in certain situations in the football game. So I think he's a really good fit for Wink's scheme. So that's where I was leaning. Yeah.
I mean, they're both going to make the team, and I think they're both going to have a role on the defense as well as on special teams. But McFadden, I think, brings a little bit more to the table. And, maybe it's just me, but when I look at him, I think he's a little quicker than he was last year. And, part of that is again, year 2 in the system. So he's a little bit more comfortable with what he's doing, and he's playing faster.
Yeah. When you're I talk about that a lot. I don't care what you do in life, you're going to do it better when you're confident in yourself.
Absolutely.
I see Doug. That's a hot take in the chat. Yeah. I want to get your surprise. It wouldn't shock me though. I'm not predicting it. Ryan Conley was cut, so nobody saw
that up there.
Yeah, nobody saw Ryan Conley being cut after his rookie year. We all loved him, right? So
I like Beavers.
No,
I don't want him to be cut. I like Beavers too.
Who's going to be a cut amongst the linebackers? And this may or may not surprise y'all. I'm telling you now, I'd be stunned if this guy makes it from the linebackers. Cam Brown, last year's special teams.
I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be cut.
Captain.
The only way he makes it is because of special teams.
Injuries.
Or injuries. I'm gonna say my guy. Maybe it's a surprise to some people. I don't know if it's considered a surprise or not, because he was a draft pick last year. So generally speaking, you don't cut a guy that quickly. I think DJ Davidson's going to get cut. Is that a crazy take?
No, this is what I think is going to happen with him. I think he's going to get cut and go to the practice squad.
Yeah.
They signed 2 veterans ahead of him.
And Jordan Riley.
Pretty obvious to me that DJ Davidson's not making the 53. I think they put him on the practice squad. Because here's the other thing. The later these guys come off a pup, the more likely you're going to see them try to sneak them through to the practice squad. And the same holds true for McKethan, who was just activated, last week or earlier this week? I forget exactly when. The days will run together for me. So he's somebody, I think if Wan'Dale Robinson comes off pup and Daboll keeps saying there's no timeline for him, I'm going to be interested to see what happens with him, because he's somebody I don't think they could slip through to the practice squad. So I wonder if he's actually going to come off or if they're going to leave him on there. I mean, he looks like he's getting close, but I'm not a doctor. I can only go by what I tell. And then Aaron Robinson at this point, it's like,
And I like Aaron Robinson, but it doesn't seem like. But
yeah. Got to stay on the field.
It's crazy, though, that
he was injured early in the year.
You think about how much better in terms of depth that this team has become in just 2 years. It's crazy that we're talking about cutting a guy like a DJ Davidson going into his second year. With Dave Gettleman, these guys were starting day one, these 5th-round draft picks. Like, it's crazy that, and not just him. You look at the depth at the wide receiver spot. not that we're super deep. We saw that on the offensive line, we're very thin. Obviously, we saw that our first preseason game. We definitely are thin in a lot of areas, but to have any depth at all, I'm not used to it as a Giants fan. Going into preseason, talking about 4 or 5 guys that you're like, wow, I'm surprised that guy's probably not going to make the team. And that just goes to show you we're becoming a much better football team.
The secondary might have a little bit more depth than I initially thought because of how well Trey Hawkins has played. And obviously you got Banks on the other side where they're, messing around with the Dory in the slot. I mean, and Pinnock was great. My God, you want to talk about winning the safety spot?
Didn't I say, going back to the offseason, didn't I say that Pinnock was the guy they were eyeing to potentially replace Julian Love?
I'm telling you, that guy.
He was crazy.
Didn't I say that? And I even went so far as to say that if the Giants didn't re-sign Julian Love, which I didn't think they would, that Pinnock was going to be first up.
But look at what Shane did. Last year, he picks Pinnock up off the scrap heap. He picks Hodgins up off the scrap heap.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's getting Pinnock for pennies. This guy can play. This guy looks like he's a legitimate starting safety in the NFL. But again,
it was Hawkins' coverage on that first interception.
Yes, absolutely.
When it goes unnoticed, he blanketed the receiver.
By the way, Hawkins from a small school, Old Dominion. I mean, can we agree that Joe Shea, just based on
where Zemenis is from? Isn't Zemenis also
third round pick out of ODU? Yeah.
I mean, can we agree that Joe Shane this year really, hit it out of the park with a lot of the moves he made?
It's looking good, right? It's looking good right now.
Yeah,
looking good right now. I'm excited. I mean, we're going to get the real test in 3 weeks when we get underway, but I'll take my chances. I think the Giants are going to be better than people think.
With the salary cap, getting Andrew Thomas signed, that's huge because, that would have been a problem next year if you want to get Saquon or try to sign Saquon again. Now, obviously, he was asked about McKinney. They're going to wait on McKinney because they're not going to get any kind of salary cap relief, even if they did McKinney now. Yeah. So they're going to wait on that, which I kind of figured would be the case.
And plus, Patty, think about it from McKinney's perspective. What's his incentive to sign coming off the year he had? He was injured.
None.
He's young. He knows if he has a big year, he's going to be worth $18 to $20 million a year. So what's his incentive to sign before the year starts?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I love how Shane shows patience.
Yeah.
He's been very patient. Last year, remember how everybody was screaming, oh, go trade for a wide receiver. Go trade for a wide receiver.
Yep.
What did he do? He held his water. And, hey, hi, Isaiah Hodgins,
Yep.
Hey, let's get rid of one receiver and pick up Darren Waller. That was a good one.
Exactly.
Speaking of wide receivers, Patty, have you heard what the deal is with Colin Johnson? Like, I hadn't heard. I just know he kind of.
Yeah. He has a sprained knee. I want to say MCL. It's not considered like long term, but if it is indeed the MCL, like I heard, that could be a couple weeks or so. So
that stinks. I like him.
I like the kid. I mean, it's not. From what I understand, it's not season ending. That they're going to kind of just see how he comes through with rehab. It's a shame because he was having a good camp and
he was having a great too.
Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, now who are your receivers? Mm-hmm. We can all agree Hodgins, Campbell, Hyatt,
Slayton.
Okay, so that's
Wandale. He's healthy.
Yeah, but Wandale, I have a feeling they're going to put him on PUP to start the year. I just have that feeling. All right, so you've got 4. If you're keeping 7, do you keep Shep?
You're keeping Beasley. I think all signs point to they're keeping.
I was going to say, do you keep Shep or do you keep Beasley? Or both?
I think Beasley's in the lead right now out of those two.
Okay, Crowder, you probably don't keep because if Eric Gray is your return specialist.
Yeah, I agree with that. If Gray, if they designate Gray as being the return specialist, I agree. I don't think Crowder.
Kind of sound like that's what Daboll wanted to do with him too. Was
all right. So let's see who else. You've got David Sills, who's Daniel Jones's buddy.
No, he's out.
You've got Colin Johnson, who like I said, has been having a good camp.
With the injury, he's out. Yeah.
So who are those bottom 3 receivers that you're going to keep?
I think it's Beasley, Shep,
Crowder probably.
Maybe
I don't think Crowder makes it.
Yeah, maybe they only go with 6. Possible.
I don't know about that.
Who's your
Depends.
7
See,
then?
injuries is going to play a
Of course.
factor because remember, Shep is still ramping up, but he should be good to go. But who's the other guy? Do you go with? I'm trying to
I
think.
mean, I'm just worried that Colin Johnson being injured again would get him off the team. I always envision how nice it'd be to have a 6'6" guy down there with 6'5" Isaiah Hodgins and 6'6" Darren Waller. I mean, it would be nice to have that, inside the 10-yard line package with a mobile quarterback and a Saquon Barkley. There's a bunch of things you could do. Gronk wants to come.
I'm going to tell you what. Week 1, hot take, Patty, because I think they're obviously going to change the roster week to week.
Absolutely.
Week 1, I think we go 6 wide. Dallas,
Okay.
we're going to run a lot of 12 personnel.
Yes.
I think we throw an extra tight end on the roster week 1.
I was going to say that.
I think we go 6 wide week 1.
So if you go four tight ends, obviously Waller and Bellinger. You think Cager probably makes it. Who's your fourth guy? Is it going to be Sweeney? Is it going to be Myrick? Who's your fourth guy?
Sweeney did have the touchdown. Myrick did not.
Myrick's more of a blocker,
I think it's going to be Sweeney.
Yeah, I would lean Sweeney too with his ties to Buffalo. But I think week 1, if I'm leaning, I think they go extra tight end. They go 6 wide against Dallas, and then that might completely change week 2.
It's gonna. You're absolutely right. They're gonna swap guys in and out off the roster. They always do in the beginning part anyway.
Yeah.
And then don't forget, the rosters become set that first week, and then if you want to add guys and not have their salaries guaranteed, you make the moves in week 2. So that's going to factor in. And also, the other thing you got to remember is if you want to move anybody to the IR, temporary IR to have them come back later, you've got to carry them on the initial 53. That's why, when people say, oh, the final 53, no, it's not the final 53. It's the initial 53 because there's going to be moves made, almost definitely. So, and then with Pup, assuming that if Wandale's not ready and Aaron Robinson aren't ready, it's now 4 weeks they've got to sit on Pup as opposed to 6, which was in the past. So that's going to factor in. That's why I'm like, I'm not so sure. Like when Shane said that Robinson within the next week and a half, and this was a week and a half ago, I was very surprised to hear that because I'm like, that kind of throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing.
Yeah. I also want to point to what Mark said, by the way. I agree. They go with 7 if Wan'Dale's ready to go. I was speaking off what Patty said, and she said she doesn't think he's going to be ready to go. So if Wan'Dale is ready to go, I agree. That's the 7.
Yeah, definitely.
If he's ready to go.
But Patty seems to think he won't be ready to go. So
the longer he sits on Pup, because remember, even if he gets activated off Pup, say tomorrow, which I don't think will be the case, they still got to ramp him up.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what they're doing with Shep. Shep is working every other day.
Shep looked good on that double move against the Hawkins, didn't he? I mean,
Shep,
it's one-on-one.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Shep has been working his butt off from almost from the time he had that surgery. Soon as he could, he was trying to push himself. He has been working his butt off. I mean, the trainers have to basically hold him back because he's so anxious. And he's like, okay, I know I got to listen to them, but you could tell he is hungry. He is really hungry to get out there. And
I'm excited. I'm excited. And I'll tell you what, one guy we haven't talked about that deserves mentioning because he took a lot of crap from a lot of fans on Twitter when training camp first got underway. No, this year. Deontay Banks. Banks looked very good in that first preseason game. He was going up against a first-round wide receiver in Jameson Williams. He's no schlep.
Mm-hmm.
And he held his own. He looked pretty damn good to me. He ran stride for stride on one play. I think Nick Filato had the film breakdown where he looked like he ran the route for the wide receiver, and then he came off of it and he tackled the tight end. He had that one really good play on the deep throw to Williams where Williams kind of had him beat but showed great recovery speed, and then he got his hand in there to break up the play. Banks looked impressive to me. Now, we got to realize as fans, he's going to struggle. Like, I guarantee you week 1, Dallas is going to pellet him with targets.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you guys something. Wink said he would not be against playing 2 rookies, Banks and Hawkins on the outside.
I heard.
And Adoree down in the slot. How do you guys feel about that?
That'd be tough against Dallas. I mean, you got Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb, so they're going to get tested right away. But listen, that's
CD's down in the slot, so
right.
With,
But the thing is, we have to understand that as good as Banks and Hawkins, look, they're rookies and they're going to get cooked. It happens. I mean, I always say I think that's the second most difficult transitional position for a collegiate player to move to the NFL. Quarterback being number one, the cornerback being number two, because the wide receivers in the NFL, the catch radius is ridiculous. The route running is crisp. They're tall. They're fast. They're strong.
And you can't touch them.
You have to react, right? You're the guy. You don't know the play. The wide receiver knows which route he's running. So it's all instincts and it's all reactionary for the corner. And if you get beat, you got to have a short memory. Got to forget about it, because otherwise that's going to mess you up. If you let that play in your head, oh, God, he beat me deep this time. I got to play off him. Then they're just going to tear you up underneath. So you have to learn to adapt and adjust. So they're going to have times where they get beat. And if, it happens week one, you can't be like, oh, God, Deontay Banks sucks. CeeDee Lamb, 7, catches 112 yards. I mean, he's one of the best, So our corners, Chris has mentioned before, we're going against some pretty good wide receivers.
You name it. We're going up. You name it. You name it. That wide receiver. We're playing them this year. We're playing them.
San Fran, Miami, Seattle,
the Raiders, even Devontae Adams. Like you name it, we're going up against it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But you guys would be okay if we decided, okay, I'm primarily going to run the two rookies on the outside and Adoree in the slot. Although I still think the slot is going to be more of a committee approach. I
don't think Wink is going to run Adoree exclusively in the slot.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think he's going to pick his, like week one against Dallas makes sense because CD plays a lot in the slot. So that's their guy. So if that's where they think CD is going to line up a lot, yeah, I could see him using Adoree there more than some people may think week one and testing the rookies. I also think against Dallas, because they don't have Zeke anymore, right? They're not built the same way. I think the Giants are going to go for more speed on the field against Dallas week one. I think they're going to have the big fellas in the middle, of course, with that, that sturdy interior defensive line. But I think you're going to see a ton of multiple, like extra DB sets. I don't think you're going to see a lot of Beavers, maybe a little bit of McFadden, like you said.
See a lot of nickel and dime.
A lot. I think you're going to see a lot more speed out there because you got to worry about Pollard coming out of the backfield as a wide receiver. And like BadDog said, I mean, they got weapons all over the field. We just forget about Gallup. Gallup's a good wide receiver. Like, they have weapons all over the field with that football team. So I think the Giants are going to have a bit more speed on the field defensively week one.
Yeah, Noah Brown's not bad either. I mean, they got a good wide receiver core. I mean, listen, Dallas, I make fun of them all the time because I hate the Cowboys. And Dak stinks. And yes, he does. And Tiki is better than Emmitt Smith. I like to get that in every time I can. But
tell us how you really feel, dog.
You don't want that, Patty. It'd be going on for an hour.
I can't wait to hear how you really feel about the Eagles.
Yeah, that's the Eagles. But Dallas is a really good team. I mean, I think we did close the gap on them. We played them tough both games last year, and especially the Thanksgiving Day game. We were up 13-6 at halftime with half a team on a short week. And then they just wore us down like a lot of teams did with that running game, but that should not happen this year. That's why they went out there and they signed Ashawn, they signed Nacho to beef up that interior defensive line, to give these guys a rest so they're not getting pushed around at the end of the game. Game is at home. It's prime time. It's way more important to the Giants than Dallas. The Giants got to win this game. They have to. They have to get off to the start. They have to let the division know right away. We're here to play, guys. We can beat you because we haven't beat Dallas since 2020. And I don't think they played in that game when we beat them. And, the Giants, Chris and I have discussed this a lot of times. If the Giants are going to take a step forward this year, it's being better within the division. We have to find ways to beat
right. And if they win that game against Dallas, they're actually 1.5 up on Dallas, if you think about it.
It sets the tone for the whole season, like the Titans game last year. You beat Dallas at home, suddenly the team starts to say, we've closed the gap. Now we've shown we can compete within the division. You get an opponent the next week where we should destroy them, in my opinion, the Arizona, and you're looking at more than likely a 2-0 start. So if you beat Dallas, I mean, this team's their head's going to be through the roof. They're going to be ready to go. BadDog talked about building confidence. It's going to be built in a big way if the Giants can knock off the Dallas Cowboys week number 1. I mean,
Patty, you make a good point. Divisional games are like 1.5 games.
Yeah.
That's really what they're worth. So to get off to that kind of start, to have the winning record in the division. Now, remember, the Giants did not spend one day over 500 from 2017 through 2021. They didn't spend one day under it last year. So we don't want to be back under there. This first game is, I know it's game 1 and I know it's a long season, but it is, to me, of optimal importance to win this game. They have to win this game. They have to let everybody know on a national stage, you know what? You can talk about our quarterback. You can say we got lucky last year. Oh, it was just Minnesota. The defense stinks. You go on the national stage and you beat your division rival in front of everybody to see, people are going to start taking you more seriously. It's something the Giants got to do. The Giants believe in themselves. Now the Giants got to make believers out of other people. That's what I said.
Yeah, and you know what? Even, I talked earlier about how Daniel's walking around with a little bit more swagger to him. You know who else is walking around with a little bit more swagger? At least
Kayvon.
Well, besides him, I was thinking
he had it last year.
Staff,
I know.
Kafka and Wink. I see a lot more swagger coming out of those guys.
Yeah.
It's almost like, they've got this big surprise that they're going to drop on Dallas for opening night, and they can't wait to unveil it,
I'm telling you,
I work on the Cowboys.
Maybe I'll be a fool. I like our chances week 1. I've said it since the schedule came out. I trust our coaching staff a lot more than Dallas's, especially with the continuity coming back. And you give Daboll 2-3 months to prepare. I'm telling you, the Giants are going to come out with a good game plan. I like our chances week 1. I think we're getting off to a 1-0 start. I really believe that.
If Daniel Jones, if he has time, which is a big if, Trayvon Diggs, you can beat him with double moves. They take a while to run, but he's very aggressive corner, and you can certainly use that against him. But again, you got to give Daniel Jones the pocket to throw to.
Yeah.
So, Paris Campbell's a guy that's run very fast. Slayton's very fast. Hyatt's just like I said, he's got a jetpack up his behind. I mean, that kid can fly. He really can.
Do you not love how he splits the coverage?
He's just so fast.
Oh my goodness. And that kid's playing with a lot more confidence now too. Because when he first came in, he was kind of confident, and some people I know said, "Oh, he's cocky." I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't say cocky. He was confident, and then the confidence kind of got muted a little bit, and then all of a sudden he started making these great plays, and you could just see it. And he doesn't act like a rookie, if that makes sense. He's very confident, and he's not. He just doesn't act like a rookie, if you know what I mean.
He's got confidence. I love it. I mean, Chris and I both wanted to draft him. Didn't think we'd get him in the 3rd round, which was amazing. But I liked him from day one. And one thing I really liked about him is he has really good taste. He had a nice Burberry bag. I said, "Yep, that's my guy," because me knows I love Burberry, and my wife got me into that. This guy knows his fashion sense.
On a quick glance, does he not remind you of Evan Ingram on a quick glance physically?
Yes, just more slender.
On a quick glance.
But yes.
A little bit. His hairstyle.
Yeah, a little
Patty,
bit.
where do they get the questions? I know you're on Instagram. So where do they get the questions for these guys? Like, would you rather be in a room full of spiders or snakes?
Oh my God!
Would you rather have?
Would you want hair for teeth or teeth for hair?
That was funny.
That one was easy. I didn't write anything.
Hair for me, of course.
You could shave it.
Hair in the mouth.
You could shave it. Nobody wants hair for teeth.
Wear a hat.
Yeah, you wear a hat, or you could shave the teeth off.
But those are funny. I'm like, where are they?
Well, the other one, the one that grossed me out was, have you ever peed in a pool? It's like,
I didn't see that one.
Guilty. Guilty.
I mean, everybody's done that. I mean, don't lie. Don't lie. Everybody's
believe it or not. Never did.
Never.
Never.
Good for you. Guilty.
No, it's funny. Because when I was young, we used to have a pool when I was young, and if I had to go to the bathroom, my father was like, "Get out of the pool now so you can dry off," because my mother wouldn't let me walk through the house. That's why you
peed in the pool when you're a kid. I don't want to get out and dry.
Yeah, I was, but my brother I know did. I was like, how come he gets to do it and I don't? And they're like, because you're a girl, it's gross. I'm like, okay, whatever. But some of those questions that they asked, they're
the other one that
very
I love,
creative.
I loved. Would you rather eat a jar of mayonnaise or a handful of sand or whatever it was. I was like,
God,
sand
mayonnaise.
all day. I mean, when Daniel
Sand?
Jones, oh God, mayonnaise is. No.
Well,
I
miracle
would
whip
eat
isn't
sand.
too bad.
I would eat sand all day over mayonnaise.
I would
Definitely.
rather not eat either, but
Well, that was what they said. I don't want to be an
Yeah.
homeless.
I would much rather choose neither. I'd probably pick sand too, though. I can't do
pick sand.
mayonnaise. Can't do it.
you know what? We got to send them some suggestions from this chat. You know how we talk about favorite pizzas and favorite dishes and stuff like that. The good stuff, right, guys?
Yeah,
Talk about
absolutely.
the good stuff.
Yeah,
All
like,
right.
would you rather have a cannoli or a bear claw? And the answer is
Oh,
cannoli.
bear claw.
Oh,
Bear claw.
no.
God, Patty,
I
that's
like bear claws. What can I say?
the wrong
No,
answer.
I don't like
Cannoli.
the stuff, the filling in cannolis. I'm sorry, but I like Zeppelis.
Zeppelis are great. But
Zeppelis are
they're not
great.
cannolis.
Yes.
Patty, you disappoint me. You're
I'm
my
sorry.
girl. You don't like cannolis. I mean, how can we continue this
I
relationship?
I don't like the
Patty,
filling.
I love you. I've had a great time doing the show with you for the last couple of years or whatever it's been, but I'm not coming back next week.
Patty.
You don't like cannolis? Are you kidding me?
I don't like the filling. I'm sorry, but I
Don't
like
worry, my wife's
cheesecake,
not a big-
ricotta cheesecake.
She's not a
So
big
are you a texture person when it comes to food? Are you a person that's bothered by texture? Because some people are like
No,
that.
not really. I go by taste, and also I just don't like a heavy. To me,
That
the
is
cannoli filling is very
Cannolis
heavy,
are
very
heavy.
thick. It's kind of like having cake with fondue topping or the icing. You
Right.
know that icing. Give me buttercream all day, every day.
Bill said no cannoli, unfollowed and blocked.
And I'm Italian too. My grandmother's
I
probably
know.
laying in her grave going, "What are you talking about?"
My kid won't even try it. Like it's so. Actually, no. We went to. I took my mom out to Delmonico's. We took my mom out. Delmonico's is a. I don't know. Did they have those down in the city, Chris? I know they have in Florida.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we went to Delmonico's, and I get the cannoli's big. There, it's big, quite frankly. I actually had Kevin actually would taste it. Like I get him here, and he will not touch them. But he did it. I was like, my wife's like, this, or this, and he's like, but then he wouldn't have any more. I'm like,
All right, I got another one for you, Patty. Italian dessert. Napoleon. You like Napoleon?
Yes.
Dynamite,
Okay,
love them.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. I like a lot of Italian food. Come on, I'm Italian but that's my heritage. I'm just not a big cannoli fan, and I'm also not a huge sausage fan.
I respect it. I'm disappointed, but I respect it.
Yeah, I mean, my husband loves sweet Italian sausage. I don't care for it.
Okay.
But I like meatballs. Obviously, I like the what's that meat called? The
Brajol.
Brajol, yes.
Yeah.
I make a great lasagna. I make some great Italian dishes myself, but
My wife had for dinner. She had lasagna, which we don't usually give lasagna.
I make that's how I get my vegetables in, because I chop them up real small. So I put in carrots, zucchini, because otherwise I won't eat that stuff unless they're really cut up small. I know I'm not as bad as Ryan Dunleavy. Ryan Dunleavy's got weirder eating habits.
Yeah, I forgot what it was. I saw. What did he post that he's never had? What was it again?
Salad.
No, it wasn't that. That's weird. But I saw it recently, like a day or two ago. I can't remember what it was, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Well, I know a day or two ago he was talking about movies he hadn't seen.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Maybe
he hadn't seen Airplane and I think Naked Gun were the two.
Yeah, that's ridiculous for an older person.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got some unusual eating habits or preferences.
It's like okay for the Yankees announcer. The guy won't eat an egg, and he doesn't like ketchup. He eats hot dogs with no condiments on them. Like if I'm eating a hot dog, I need as many condiments on that thing as I can get on it to get a hot dog.
Yeah. So. Hot dogs are. My husband likes them. I'm not as big of a fan unless they're dunked in something. But
yeah, I'm with you.
Get back to with the Italians, guys. We'll get back to the Giants in a minute.
Speaking of Italian, how about Tommy DeVito?
Tommy D.
We'll talk about him. I got to take a quick break, guys. I got to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll put aside the food because we're all getting hungry here. So if you want to go run into the kitchen and get something now.
I'm going to go get some Brajol. I'll be back.
We're going to be right back, guys. Hey, Giant fans, did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning hair with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising one's sexual health. And it works. In a clinical study, 84% of the men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months of taking Nutrafol's men's hair growth supplements. So go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. Identify the causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off their first month subscription and free shipping when they go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. That's spelled Nutrafol, Nutrafol, and that website is Nutrafol.com/men with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for your special offer.
I feel like that was directed towards me, Patty.
It was directed.
Well, I'll tell you what, Patty, next time you do a commercial about gray hair, it'll be directed towards me.
It's funny. They're a new sponsor of ours. They just came on board this week, and we've got some great new sponsors, by the way. I'm Locked On, so I'm really excited about them. But anyway, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Locked On Giants, aka the Food Channel, which we're going to put the food stuff away for now. But guys, you mentioned Tommy DeVito before we took the break, and I have a question for you that I want to run by you. So last week, we all know Tommy DeVito. He looked pretty good, all things considering, but he was going up against, second, third team. So here's my question. I'm not trying to disparage him, but here's the question. A lot of people are going gaga and thinking, oh, wow, great, and whatnot. So when you have guys going up against second, third team, fourth team guys that maybe won't even be on an NFL roster in the spring, how do you kind of grade on a curve, or do you grade on a curve when saying, okay, you know what, this guy might be worth keeping, even though he went up against second, third, fourth string guys?
Yeah, I mean, we went through the same thing last year with Webb. Like, you had some fans that were like, because Webb had a great preseason, and you had some fans acting like, oh, Webb should be the backup. You even had some fans before the year started saying, Webb might be better than Daniel Jones. I heard it, believe it or not. It did happen during the preseason. So I think a lot of people put way too much stock into preseason football, especially when you factor in exactly what you said. He's not going up against first teamers. He's not going up against second teamers. The majority of the guys that DeVito was going up against were guys that won't be playing in the NFL this year, if we're being honest. But what I will say, what stood out to me for DeVito and what I respected, and I definitely think he earned probably the QB3, which we know in the league now this year with the new rules, they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks. I think he was on the bubble for that, because if he looked bad, like a lot of people were saying going into that game, he probably gets cut and we pick somebody else up. I think after the performance he had, he played really well. When you factor in the circumstance, we couldn't block to save our lives in that game, and he stood in the pocket tough, man. He definitely showed he had some toughness, and he made a couple of good plays. So I was happy for him, because I think he probably cemented himself as the QB3 for this team. Do I think he's going to pass Tyrod Taylor as the backup? No. But, hey, you never know. Maybe he develops into a long-term backup, which would be great. You get a backup for a much cheaper price long-term. Obviously, we're paying Tyrod, I think, $6 million, which is like more than half what we're paying Saquon. So if you get a guy for really cheap to be the backup for Jones long-term, that'd be great, whether it's DeVito or somebody else. But, yeah, I thought it was a really good preseason performance, but I don't put too much stock into it in terms of him as a player.
What I saw from DeVito, and look, I'll be the first to admit, in the springtime and even early summer, I thought, this guy, he holds the ball too long. Yeah. He's overshooting targets. He didn't stand out to me. He's gotten better. I'll give him that. he's calmed down. He's was more on point. And again, you take into consideration the level of competition he's going against. But in terms of, the way I evaluate, I say, okay, yes, Tommy DeVito is maybe we could say third string quarterback. He was going up against second string defense and he was looking good.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of like, like with Trey Hawkins. When Trey Hawkins was in college, small program, was he a man amongst boys when on the field? So that's kind of what I look for. And, I was encouraged by the performance DeVito showed. I don't know, is he necessarily ready to go up against, say, the Jets first team defense? I don't know about that, but find out what you got in him, because now is the time to experiment. Now is the time to see what you've got and not be afraid. The one thing I will say about Daboll, he doesn't coach scared. Like I sit here and, I'll say, don't put Adoree Jackson back there on punt return, or don't do this or don't do that. Don't run Daniel Jones up, on power runs, because I'm like, I'm thinking something bad's going to happen. But Daboll's like, you know what? I'm not coaching scared. If that's what's best, if that's what's going to help us win, I'm doing it. And, I'll deal with the fallout later.
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned that game 1 last year when he went for 2 points. He said, I'm not going for the tie, I'm going for the win right now. And if we lose, it's on me. But I also think that gave the team a lot of confidence. They said, wow, this coach actually believes in us. Joe Judge wouldn't have done that. So, I mean, that's the type of thing. I think Daboll coaches, outside the box. Joe Judge did a lot of talking about what he was going to do. But then it seemed like when that time actually came, he did the opposite. Where Daboll, has pretty much told you what he's going to do. And when he says something, he does it. So,
Judge often second guessed himself.
Right.
At the end of the day, he second guessed himself. And, when things went astray, he just took on more than I think he was capable of handling. Instead of, banding together with the coaching staff and saying, okay, guys, let's figure out what the heck we're doing here and how we're going to get out of this rut. He felt like he had to get everybody out of the rut. And, that's why, I was talking to somebody, one of my colleagues on the sideline during one practice, and we were talking about how Joe was just not ready in retrospect to be a head coach, because, being a head coach is, when you've got to delegate, and you also know when you've got to take it on your shoulders. And Daboll, even though this is his first time being a head coach, he seems to have a good balance with that.
He's himself. He's confident in himself.
Exactly. He's not Belichick. And here's the other thing. He's not Belichick. He's not Saban. He's himself.
But he learned from them. And he
learned
applies
from them.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas, we look at McAdoo, for example. McAdoo basically grew up, if you will, as a coach under McCarthy for how many years? Judge grew up, if you will, under Saban and Belichick, all from that same line. Daboll was with Belichick and with Saban, but he also, of course, as we know, was with McDermott.
Yeah, he was all over.
And he was all. I think he was with the.
He was with the Jets. He was with the Jets when they had Favre. Yep. He was with Miami. Yeah, he was all over. He was all over.
So Daboll had an opportunity to see different ways to do things and pick up a little bit here, a little bit there, and blend that all into who he is. And that was key. That I think that's one of the most underrated elements, and why, the Giants maybe went for him, because they didn't get themselves a Belichick clone. They didn't get themselves a Saban clone. They got a guy who had experience moving around the league, and, that's what they needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think the vibe he brings to the team, you could tell the players buy into him, and you're starting to see players go out of their way to want to play here. Right? You're starting to see players take probably a little bit less money than we saw Rob Gronkowski today. And he's obviously not playing at all. Okay. He's going to stay retired, but he said the only coach, and he was never his head coach, by the way. He was part of the staff, and I guess Rob had a bit of, knowledge of him that way, but he said the only coach that he would come back and play for in the NFL right now, or consider, or if he was going to consider, would be Brian Daboll.
Yeah. Justin Pugh wants to come back.
Justin Pugh wants to come back. So, you're seeing players show
Yeah,
a lot
people
of
wanna
respect.
come here.
Landon Collins last year wanted to come back.
Yeah.
Daboll is the real thing, guys. I mean, I think you all see it, but what you see is what you get with Daboll. And he's just, I find him an absolute trip. I'll tell you, a real, a quick story. This summer I had a couple of young writers, students that needed like on-site experience for their college courses. So I brought them in, separate times, and I brought this one kid in who got, Dave. I wanted them to both meet Daboll, but unfortunately, one kid didn't, and then the other kid did. So the one that did, I caught Daboll coming off the podium before practice, and I said, "Hey, Daves," I said, "I'd like you to meet, Andrew. He's one of my young writers that is here for college credit, yada yada yada." And I said, "Oh, by the way, he's a Penn Stater." Oh my gosh, Daboll just absolutely. He spent like about 5 minutes with the kid. The kid was sitting there. He was like, and he was just so amazed at the whole, process. And this is what Daboll's like. He's very approachable. You can joke with him. The other day in the presser, for example, I don't know if you guys caught it or not. The first question, rare of me to ask this, but I asked about the injuries. I said, "Do you have an update on the injuries?" He goes, "Yes, I do." And then he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "Would you like to hear it?" If that, I wonder if that.
And I don't know if you got a chance to watch
please.
I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Boomer interview, which Boomer's whatever, he's clickbait, but Boomer and Gio, Daboll is just like, he's making me crack up. Like you could just tell, like he's just himself. He's not a guy that plays to the cameras. He's not a guy that has this fake persona. He's a guy that you would love to have a beer with. And he's a guy that obviously knows what he's talking about.
Amazing guy just pointed out Cole Beasley came out of retirement to play for Daboll.
There you go. There's another one. Yeah.
Yep. So the list grows because this guy, he really means it when he says, going to do what's best for the players, for the organization. I mean, what a difference in the culture. Yeah. The Giants, the last practice that was open to the public, they actually had like a carnival, like a mini carnival for all the players and their families. They did a lot more, like, cookouts and special things for, the families. Yeah. You didn't see that before. I mean, you saw some of it, but not like this.
Another guy, A'Shawn Robinson, came out and said, they asked him why he came to the Giants. He said, "Because I see what they were building here. I see what they're building here. I see what they're where they're trending." You could tell they're starting to get a lot more respect around the league.
Absolutely.
It's and it's so crazy how quickly that happens.
They are straight shooters.
The media might not notice it, but the players do. That's all that really matters.
So,
yeah.
I was doing a reaction. I do reactions of the interviews in the live streams that I do, and somebody asked Daboll about injuries, like anything new on the injury front, and he just went, "Nope." That was it.
Oh, you're talking about today?
No, it wasn't today. It was a couple of days ago. He's went, "Nope." That was it. That was all he's.
You can kind of tell. There's certain times like again, going back to the question I asked when I said, "Do you have an update on the injury report?" And he said, "I do." And then he smiled and he says, "Would you like to hear it?" And I was like, "Yes, please." As opposed to just saying, "Yeah, I do," and just moving on to the next question. So I think sometimes it depends on the person asking or how he's asked. I mean, I don't want to talk for the man, obviously, but he what you see is what you get with him. Just really is, and you can kind of tell if you watch him on the podium, you can kind of see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So. Somebody asked Daniel Jones, I think it was yesterday. They said, "Oh, do you have any like extra motivation playing against the Panthers because it was your childhood team?"
Like, you grew up
I saw that.
I'm like, why did he ask that? And they're like, "When you were growing up, did you ever envision yourself being quarterback of the Panthers?" And I'm sitting there going, "How?" I'm like, "What kind of questions?" I'm like, "Listen, a home team or not." I'm like, and no disrespect to Carolina, but I'm pretty sure if you're a football fan, you don't sit there at 11 and go, "God, I really envision myself being the quarterback of the."
You know what I think the problem is, Dog, and I don't want to speak for anybody. This is just my own observation. There are some people that feel they have to ask a question every single day, every single presser, regardless if it's good. You know, I prescribe to quality over quantity. So there are days that I will ask, and there will days that you won't hear my voice at all. And, you know, the days that I do ask, a lot of times I've actually got that question in mind before I even get to the presser. Very
Right.
rarely does something just pop into my head and do I just spit it out.
It was
I
just
have it written
weird.
down.
I didn't get it because they might not play. I mean, who's saying he's playing? I'm sure they will, but there's no guarantee Daniel Jones is even going to play. So, you know, they did ask him that. I did, you know, and he said, well, because they said, you know, Coach Daboll.
And you know, he's not BSing. I don't think he's BSing when he says, look, we don't know. We're going to talk about it.
No, I don't either. No, I'm not. What I was saying is, he said, you know, Coach said we're going to play, but he didn't say when. So
Right.
it might not even be in this game. It might be in the third game. I mean, who knows?
Right.
So why they asked that question about him playing against Carolina when they play him during the regular season?
They put him during the regular season last year. They could have asked it last year.
Right. It's just a weird question.
Yeah, I mean, I understand everybody's got different, you know, purposes for what they want to ask. So I don't want to be critical of anybody, but, you know, I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for myself and how I approach it. And a lot of times, I would say 9 times out of 10, if I'm asking something, it's something I've written down before I've even gotten to the facility, something that I've thought about, because I'm not going to ask a question that I know the answer to. That to me is just, you know, I'm not in TV. I don't need the soundbite. I get it. TV reporters need the soundbite. You know, what would a win mean to you? Okay, duh. What do you think a win would mean? You know, but that's how I approach it. So, you know, some people just, like I said, it's for some people it's quantity over quality. I try to do quality over quantity. That's just me. I'm not, again, please don't think I'm being critical of anybody. That's just my approach. So, all right, guys, I got to ask you something about Saquon. We haven't spoken about Saquon, which might be a good thing, might not be. But Saquon's kind of had, I don't want to say a quiet camp, but because he's made plays and he's looked good, but he's really dialed in, probably as much, if not more so, than I recall seeing him ever in any camp.
Yeah.
What has been your I know we haven't seen him in a game yet, but what's been your takeaway based on, you know, what you've seen, what you've heard, just the whole way this scenario with him kind of unfolded, you know, with him coming in, which was a surprise to everybody. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Saquon did what his only choice was at that point. I mean, his other choice would be to hold out, but it was a no-win situation. And I think he realized that's only going to hurt my image. I know that there's life after football, you know, so I think he came in appropriately. He looks good now, looks like a team guy. And I think Saquon this year, obviously, provided he stays healthy, which for him is a big if, you know, if we're being honest. Last year, he got a huge workload, a bigger workload by far than he's ever gotten. Take into account he played 16 games and then he played 2 playoff games, and he got a ton of wear and tear last year. So we'll see how he responds this year. He's never been through a workload like that, and he's had injuries in the past. But I'm going to tell you what, Saquon Barkley this year, if he's on the field, I think he's going to be used a little bit less in terms of frequency because I think they're going to throw more. And I think they're going to have a little bit more of a running back by committee approach, but he's going to have more big plays because he's going to be more rested throughout the game. And now you have more players to worry about. Saquon has never had that in his entire career. Outside of his rookie season for about 8 or 9 games with Odell Beckham, he's never had another guy that the opposing defense had to worry about. And you tack on, you got to worry about Daniel Jones's legs. So if the defense has to game plan for all these different facets, Saquon Barkley is going to be a bit more rested because I don't think they're going to run him into the ground this year. He's going to have a lot of 20-plus yard plays. I think Saquon Barkley is going to be more explosive this year because he's going to have more opportunity just based on what the opposing defenses are going to have to, you know, focus on. It's not going to just be Saquon because if you put 8 in the box, Darren Waller is going to kill you. You put 8 in the box, you can't cover Darren Waller, believe me. So, and the fact that I think more defenses now are going to have to pay attention to Daniel Jones's legs than they've done in the past based off the way that Brian Daboll used him. I think explosive plays this year for Saquon. I really do.
I think Saquon, I mean, he wants to get paid. So he didn't like the way things happened this offseason, whoever's fault that was. But I think this year, Saquon, it's all business. I mean, this is business. He swallowed his pride. He took the tag. He came in. I didn't like. We talked about it. I didn't think he'd be there week one. I thought he would sign the very last minute because that was the only leverage he had. But again, people have talked about his character. He proves it time and again. He's a high character guy. Wants to help the team win. He's a team first guy. So, I think he wants to go in there, have a big year, and just say, okay, somebody's going to give me some money. Come on, guys. I do this for you. Do it for me. But I think he wants to go out there and prove that, they need me. They need me to be that guy. And like Chris said, I think you're going to see bigger plays from him because you're not going to have to rely as heavily on him as you did last year. Not just because of Darren Waller and you added some outside speed, but Daniel Jones' confidence level, second year in this system, I think you're going to see them stretch the field more, which defenses aren't going to be able to just stay, in a 10-yard area to say, well, we ain't got to worry about these guys getting behind us. We ain't got to worry about the tight end being a weapon in the middle of the field. We're just going to stuff the box. We're going to run blitz and all this other stuff just to stop him and say, okay, Richie James, you beat us. So I think Saquon's it's a businessman, easy for me to say, a businessman-like approach. I'm glad that it's been quiet, no distraction. And I think Saquon could have another big season. I really do.
Yeah, I could see Saquon having a similar year in terms of total yardage, but with maybe 40 or 50 less touches. Like, I think he's going to have less touches, but he's going to have bigger plays this year. I expect more with less.
That's a good point you raised, Tana, because I've always been of the belief that the Giants were going to scale back his role a little bit, just his touches. Yeah. Maybe take away third down duties and give that to, I don't know, Breida or Eric Gray if he proves he can do that. But the thing about Saquon, everybody looks at his rookie season and he had 91 receptions, but a lot of them were check downs. Yeah. Now you kind of see in training camp, you see him lining up in the slot, you see him split out wide, you see him, all over the place. And what's interesting is that in the past, we would see some of that stuff in the spring, but it would never make it over to training camp and then into the preseason. We see it now in training camp.
And everybody forgets about obviously they think they have something. Patty. Nobody's talking about Saquon. It's like he's the forgotten player on the team right now. That's
because
scary.
Of all the other and that's good because, like you said, now they, I call it the Odell syndrome. Remember when Odell was the offense and it was only Odell and that was the only guy that opponents had to worry about? Well, for a few years, Saquon was the only guy that they had to worry about. Now, worry about Waller, worry about Paris Campbell, worry about Jalen Hyatt, worry about Saquon, worry about Daniel Jones, worry about Darius Slayton. The list goes on and on. I mean, how cool is this, guys? How cool
and Melvin continues to hit it on the head, Melvin. If you watch my channel, I agree. The O-line has to perform. You could add 30 more exclamation points to that. Keep all the words capital. I'm with you. But it's preseason. You're not going to ruin my mood. I'm thinking about what this offense could be if that offensive line becomes even close to average. Because I'm going to tell you what, I've said it and I believe it. The New York Giants possess the best running duo in the NFL. And that's Saquon Barkley and that's Daniel Jones. And when you add these weapons in the pass game to that, that's only going to enhance that strength for more big plays. This offense could be really good. I think a lot of people are sleeping on this offense, but I agree with you, Melvin. The offensive line is the key. It's always been the key. It will always be the key.
Absolutely.
Big time. I mean, a lot of question marks. I mean, is there a point in time, in your opinion, that you would like to see this offensive line unit settled, the same five guys, and just let them keep working together and just get rid of this rotation?
I don't know if you saw Bobby Johnson. You probably did because you're there. Bobby Johnson, I saw a video today. His response was he was kind of like passive when they were asked if they were going to kind of implement a rotation this year at the guard position. And I was like, I don't like that. I want these guys to get in there, get a set role. I do at one point want to see Ezeudu get implemented into the offensive line because he is young. You want to see him grow. But from within games, I don't want to see musical chairs. We saw
I
that
don't
with Joe
either.
Judge. I couldn't stand it.
When
Yeah.
you do that, that means you don't know who your guy is.
You can't build continuity. That's so
You
important
can't,
with an offensive
exactly.
line.
I mean,
You know?
well, let me ask you, what would be your ideal offensive line based on what you've seen and what you know so far?
I think you go with the veterans to start the year at the guards. I think you go
So
with
you're saying Bredesen at left guard, Lewinsky at right
yeah.
guard,
I think you go with
and you're
Bredesen and
okay
Glow.
with Schmitz at center, and
Yeah,
then
and
Neal
obviously the two
and
tackles.
Thomas
Yeah.
as your tackles.
Yeah, I think
You-
that's what I expect them to go with.
What about you, Dog?
I agree. I think you got to go with especially with the rookie center. I think
Yeah.
it's best to have some, the veterans around him. That's another thing. I think that's a big upgrade at center. So the guards are the biggest question, and of course Evan Neal. I mean, Evan Neal's got to get better. I definitely think he will, but he's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's a big thing, and he's going to need his confidence because when you mention him. He's obviously if he's worried about his stance or he's twitching here, too tall, too short, whatever it is. If he's out there thinking, about his stance, he's going to get beat because that's how fast it happens in the NFL. He just needs to play football. But I would definitely just go with the veterans to start. And if they're really bad, then maybe you try something else. But
All right,
I think
let me ask you because I'm seeing this question showing up a lot in the chat. Would you sign Justin Pugh knowing that Justin Pugh is probably going to cost a little bit more than Ben Bredesen?
Yeah.
Would you sign Pugh to play left guard?
I mean, provided that we bring him in for a physical and they think he's, he fits, and they think he could help the team. Yeah. I think he's a guy that brings a little bit of offensive line versatility as well. He's been a successful lineman in the league, and we need all the help we could possibly get in terms of depth. I mean, my God, did you see the performance last week from the depth of this line? So yeah, he's not a guy I want starting probably, but he's definitely a guy that I think could help in terms of being, a depth piece on the offensive line, a guy that could step in if there's some injuries and could play multiple positions. So
right.
Yeah,
and if he's willing to come in on a veteran minimum.
Yeah, I'd be all about Justin Pugh for the right price in the right situation. Yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't start him over, say, Ben Bredesen at left guard.
No, because we talk about continuity. These guys have now been working together for well over a month. You're starting to build this. I don't want to just throw Pugh into here, who has not been in camp at all, and just be like, oh, yeah, you're starting with – no. For me, I still want to go with the guys we talked about to start the year. Yeah.
So you guys – so are you down necessarily on Matt Parrott, for example? I mean, we know Corey Cunningham is not going to be on this roster. We know Wyatt Davis was playing out of position. Tyree Phillips is still dealing with a leg injury. All right. I thought he was going to be like the guy, the swing tackle. So, I mean, how do you feel about Matt Parrott and what you've seen from him?
I'm not a Parrott guy. I would like to see him get an opportunity maybe to transition to the guard, even though he's obviously not built like a guard. He's huge. But I'd like to see if maybe he could do something there. But to me, Parrott has always been built like Tarzan, plays like Jane. Like that's been the MO with him. And he's just never lived up to what we were hoping for as fans when we drafted him. The long arms, the athletic, profile. He just has never lived up to that. And I personally would prefer Phillips as the swing tackle as opposed to Parrott. I'm not sold on Parrott at all.
And of course, Phillips before his injury, he was playing some at guard because that was something that he played when he was with the Ravens. So, I thought, oh, wow, this guy clear lock for the position. And then, of course, that leg injury popped up. But, Parrott, they like him. They say they like him. I don't know if they're just saying it just to be nice or whatever, but, he's getting that opportunity. But really, who else do they have? They signed Julian Davenport. So we'll see what he can bring to the table. But yeah, I mean, would you agree that depth at offensive tackle is still a very big problem for this team?
It is, but if we're being honest, most teams it's a huge problem. Like there's a reason that it's like the quarterback position, right? There's a reason that quarterbacks get paid what they do. People look at Daniel Jones that don't know the way the league is structured at the quarterback position and like, how do you get paid $40 million? Well, look around the league. There's only like 16, 17, 18, 20 tops guys that are legitimate starting quarterbacks. And it's the same thing with the offensive tackle. Like there's a reason that Andrew Thomas is getting paid $25, $26, $27 million, whatever he got, and all these tackles are going to continue to make more and more money because there's only so many serviceable tackles in the NFL. And you look around the league, these guys go down, it could destroy your whole season for most teams in the NFL. So, yes, it's a problem, but most teams don't have great depth on the offensive line.
No.
Yeah, there's a reason left tackles get paid a ton. His name is Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
That's a fact. But obviously, I don't care. Chris, I know mentions all the time. We talk about it all the time. It does not matter how much a game changes, how much rules change, what they do with it. The game will always be won in the trenches, always.
Yeah.
And that's just where it is. So those guys got to protect. They're the pawns in the chess game. You lose your line of defense, you're very vulnerable. So, we saw the Giants get beat up on both sides of the ball last year at the line of scrimmage, especially against Philadelphia and Dallas. And then that's why we got to get better. That's why that first game against Dallas means a lot, because those two teams, Dallas didn't really blow us out. I mean, like I said, we played them competitively, but if you look at that game, they dominated up front. The Eagles dominated in every facet. It sickens me to say that, but it's just a fact.
Oh, they did.
They did.
So,
they definitely did.
And the line's very important.
And spoiler alert, I've been doing like preseason previews. I actually have a show that's dropping at midnight that I did with Julian Council, the Locked On Panthers host. I said, Julian, what's your team's biggest concern right now? Well, guess what, folks? The offensive line, just as it was last week for the Detroit Lions, and I'm sure it's going to be next week for the New York Jets. Everybody has offensive line problems, and that's why it's just finding quality depth. Sometimes you get lucky, and then sometimes you can have these spurts where who knows what you're gonna get.
It's why I'm a firm believer that every year I want my GM to draft at least one offensive lineman every year, because it's so hard to find talent at that position. There's a lot of injuries that take place there. It's the most important position in terms of a unit on a football team, in my opinion, collectively. I always want you to continue to reset, and that's what I've loved about Joe Schoen so far. Look at what he's done. He had 2 picks inside the top 7. One was a tackle. His 3rd-round pick, he took a guard with Ezeudu. And this year, his 2nd-round pick, he takes a center. So he's clearly a guy that agrees with that philosophy. He's clearly a guy that I think is going to continue that philosophy, because if we're being honest, our offensive line is far from complete. We got a stopgap with Glowinski. He's not a guy that's going to be here very long. You could probably say the same thing for Bredesen, even though he's still relatively young. He's probably not going to be the long-term answer. So I expect him to continue to do that. But his higher draft picks, he's invested heavily in the offensive line thus far, and I expect him to continue to do that.
And you were going to see probably a cut down day. Don't be surprised if they add some guys on the offensive line, because there will be offensive linemen cut, and those guys are going to get snapped up very, very quickly because they're at a premium. Yeah. All right, guys, let's talk about inside. I'm sorry, we talked about inside linebacker too before. We've talked about receiver. We talked about running back. I think we talked about safety. We talked about cornerback. All right, you know what? Let's take questions. Okay, you guys in the chat room, you know what to do. If you have a question, pop them into the chat box,
Let's go.
We will. We'll answer them. If we miss them, just keep asking them. Eventually I'll pick them up and I'll post them on the thing. But let's.
Would you want Gronk?
What's that?
Would you want Gronkowski? Since that came out, he said that he would come out of retirement for the Giants.
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't think they would do that, but
Gronk.
Gronk's not going to do that. Gronk's not doing
that's
that.
a testament, though, to Daboll, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, what do you think about this proposal by Chronicles Podcast? Bench Glowinski, sign Pugh, Bredesen right guard, Pugh left guard, develop Ezeudu, solidified offensive line. What do you think about that?
Listen, I'm not a big fan of Glow. I'm not. And I don't want him to be here long. And if I'm being honest, I probably don't want him to finish this season as a starter. I want Ezeudu to overtake him at some point. But this far in the game, 3 weeks before the start of the regular season, I don't want shuffling. He's been playing with the first unit now all off season. They've built what you hope some chemistry with that line, getting used to playing next to one another. We talked about how we have a rookie center. I don't want any shuffling going into the year. So for me, I want continuity on that offensive line. I'm not looking to replace any starters before the year starts. So for me, I'm okay with the signing of Pugh if you want to bring him in. Veteran, depth guy, could step in if there's some injuries at multiple spots on the line. But no, I want Glow starting week 1. And I'm not a Glow guy. Believe me, I'm not. But I want him starting week 1.
Glow knows the system, too. He knows the blocking schemes. He knows all the audibles. Like, they know that stuff Pugh would have to learn.
Yeah.
So, obviously Pugh career-wise is better. But you want a guy that is going to have a handle on the offense and on the blocking schemes as opposed to a guy fresh off the streets that doesn't know all this stuff and would have to get acclimated to everybody else in the line and the blocking scheme, the audible, everything else. So, I also would. I just want to start with the guys we have. It's unfortunate that we have what we have, but those are probably the best. That's probably the best line we could put out there week 1.
I don't think he's got, again, I could see Glow getting replaced by week 4 or 5.
I could see Glow getting replaced before the year's out. Absolutely.
But to start the year, that's the line I expect him to put out there.
I'm with you.
Because to me, Azudu didn't look very good in the first preseason game. If you ask me who was the player I was most disappointed with, he's up there because he's a guy that I want to see overtake that offensive line spot. And he didn't look that good to me, at least at certain points in that game. But I want him to get that starter's job at some point. Obviously, I don't think the coaching staff believes he's quite ready yet. So let the veteran start the year and ease him in. I think that's the plan.
All right. Now there's 2 questions related to this. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of this one from Playoff P. Who is edge 3? So that would be behind Thibodeaux and Ojulari. Come on, Fox, maybe?
It might be. He looked good. He a lot. Everybody talks about the interception by Pinnock on that play, but the guy who really created it was Fox on that play.
Yep.
He might be the third edge. We'll see. I mean, who else you got competing here? You got Zimenez. You got Ward.
Zimenez, I don't think makes it.
You got Jahad Ward.
Jahad will make it, but I don't know if I would put him as 3.
Yeah, Fox. He could definitely take that spot.
And I'm going to put this question up here from Jonathan Chris about, do you see the Giants going after a pass rusher? Because it kind of piggybacks off of the who's OLB 3.
I definitely can see them going after a pass rusher. Yeah. But you can't have enough depth there. Can't get enough pass rushers, especially in Wink's system. You can't get enough pass rushers.
Well, no. Well, actually, while I agree with you, we have been seeing a lot more blitzes coming from the secondary. I mean, I made the comment the other day to somebody and they said, "Oh my God, you're right." I said, we have seen a lot of safety and corner blitzes more this camp than I remember seeing last year. So I wonder if maybe Wink is gonna, he knows he doesn't have. I believe he knows that he doesn't have like a 3 deep, like the 2011 Giants had or the 2007 Giants had. So maybe you manufacture some of those blitzes. You have a linebacker blitz. Maybe Michael McFadden, you send him in on a blitz. You send Pinnock in on a blitz, or one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That's how I think they're going to manufacture the pass rush.
And that's the way that Wink has always manufactured the pass rush. When you look at the Ravens defense historically, under Wink as the DC, they never had a guy with double-digit sacks. They were always a team that manufactured a lot of sacks. They were always among the league leaders, but it was a collective effort because it was scheme dependent. So it's kind of what I expect now, and it's why, although I do think it's a major need, I definitely think we need an edge. And if we can get a veteran edge,
have to wait for next year, though.
Yeah, whether it be in the draft, maybe you get a guy at the end that somebody cuts, but obviously you're not going to have a quality edge 3 at this point, more than likely. But I think it's being a little bit overrated by some fans, in my opinion, as like a crippling need for this team. Because, like you said, I agree. I think the pass rush comes from all over. I think it comes from the safeties. I think it comes from the corners. I think it comes from the interior defensive line. Wink's going to generate pressure based off of his defensive game plan. So I would love one. I think we could use one. But I think we get by with what we got.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right, this is a good one we didn't talk about. What are the thoughts on the punter?
He actually had a really good punt in the preseason game. It was like 90 yards, but unfortunately, they returned it for a touchdown because our punt coverage was awful.
He outkicked the coverage.
Yeah, he outkicked the coverage. He's got a big leg, We knew that last year, even though he had some duds here and there, but he's got a big leg. My issue year one, and it's only been year one, I'm going to hope that the coaching staff judged him properly and he gets better. He's not a good directional punter, at least through his first year as a New York Giant.
Here's my take on Gillen. I've never been a huge fan of his. So I'll put that out there right now. But that said, I thought this summer he was doing a little bit better job with directional punting. Yeah. I thought he was, in practice, he wasn't out kicking coverage, but it just seems like you get to the game scenario and he's due for some kind of boneheaded clunker, whether it be out kicking the coverage, whether it be, shanking the ball off the side of his foot or whatever. And, McGahee talked about that. He's like, look, we want hang time to equal distance. So if you're kicking a 45-yard punt, your hang time should be around 4.5 seconds.
Yeah.
That gives the coverage team time to get down the field to get in a position to make the play. So you have, think about it. If you're out, here and the nearest guy is here and you're trying to merge together and make the tackle, it's so much easier when you have a lot of space in front of you to put a move to get past, a guy. Whereas if a guy's right on top of you, it's harder. You know what I mean? So that's why you see the missed tackles and the diving and the poor form and everything like that. And that starts with the punting. You can't outkick your coverage. And it just seems like Gillen just is good for that, like at least once or twice a game.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not a Gillen guy.
Not very good at pinning the opponents deep inside
no,
their territory either. Like he get a lot of touchbacks. He needs more touch on his punts. You don't need to necessarily kick it out of bounds, but like you were just mentioning, the hang time, you're kicking the ball, from just outside of your own fit or on your side of the 50-yard line. I mean, you don't want to boom it into the end zone. Just put the ball up there. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just get the ball up in the air and kick it to the 10-yard line where your coverage can get down and the guy's got a fair catch it. So that's something I think that he needs to work on. He's got a good fastball. I mean, he's got a good leg. You can't get by in the majors with just a fastball. You need off-speed pitches and you need location stuff.
He's also a good holder. I mean, I was talking to Graham Gano the other day about Jamie's holding, and we were talking about that, and he couldn't say enough good things about, because Gano's had several holders in his career, and the key is getting that ball down quickly and in position. And he says, Jamie, that's one of the underrated parts of Jamie's overall game. Mm-hmm. So that's another factor. So, whatever.
He needs more Fiegels to his game, though. Fiegels was great at that in terms of.
Too bad Fiegels isn't around as much as he used to be.
Yeah.
Fiegels, he used to be around and he used to kind of be like a sounding board, but absolutely. I mean, you'd like to see more touch in Jamie Gillen's game. I mean, look, they signed him to a 2-year deal. They obviously like his leg. But, we'll see what the upcoming year brings, but got to be a little bit more consistent because I don't think, I still don't think he's there yet with consistency. So we'll see. All right. Little Caesar asked, do you think there are any players we could trade away during the season? Adoree and Saquon are on the short list. I don't think anybody's going to necessarily take Adoree's contract because he's in the last year. So it's basically a rental, as is Saquon, but I don't think the Giants are going to make any trades of those guys unless the season goes down the toilet.
Yeah.
Then I could see them being sellers.
Yeah. I agree
could I see them maybe trading an extra offensive lineman? We talked about Glowinski. If they decide, to go with Bredesen at right guard, do they maybe look to trade Glowinski to a team that needs an interior lineman? I could see that. Could I see them maybe trying to trade a receiver? I could maybe see that, but I don't know about Adoree and Saquon. I'd be surprised with that, but we'll have to see because obviously, with last year, Kadarius Toney, they didn't make that decision until a week or so before the trade deadline. So they had to kind of let things play out a little bit.
Yeah, and Toney had nothing to do with that. They felt obviously he was a distraction. He didn't fit what they were looking to do with the team. Obviously, they don't feel that way with Adoree. And they don't feel that way with Saquon. The only way they would trade those guys, like you said, this season would have to completely go up in flames. And then they would say, all right, let's get something for Saquon while we can. And let's build towards next year. I don't expect that to happen. So I don't even want to think about that. But I also don't expect Shane to be aggressive at the deadline. I think it'll be much like last year where if the right deal's there, I'm sure he'll monitor the market. I think he did monitor the market last year. And if the right deal was there, he probably would have been willing to strike something similar to, like, say, the Darren Waller situation in the offseason. If that came about at the trade deadline where you could get a player that you felt like could really impact your team for a late third-round pick, go out and do it. But he's not going to give up, the moon and the stars at the trade deadline to get a player either, because he's focused not just on the here and now, but long-term. But, yeah, I don't see them selling anybody on this team unless they're completely out of it, and I don't think they're going to be.
And then here's the other thing, right now he doesn't have any comp picks coming in next year. He doesn't have chips that he can move around with. But that's not to say that come next, April or whenever the draft is, April or May, that he won't move around the board. It's going to depend on where they end up drafting. So, a lot can happen. But then again, maybe Shane looks at the roster and says, okay, I don't need as much, as maybe I did last year. That's another possibility. They're going to be in great shape, better shape next year with the cap. They've got some of their young guys locked up, for the long term. So you got to take the whole thing into consideration. Would Shane like to have more draft picks? I'm sure he would, but he's not going to go and make a trade just for the sake of making a trade.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's see. Mark Thompson asked, do you think the Giants carry 4 running backs? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You're going to have Saquon Barkley. You're going to have Eric Gray. And I think it's going to come down to just Sean Corbin or Gary Brightwell. Now, Gary Brightwell's been injured. I don't know what's going on there, but maybe Corbin. Could you see Corbin edging him out, given that Brightwell was the kick returner last year, and he seems to be yielding that to Gray?
Yeah. He had the nice run during the preseason, but I don't want to read too much into that. Platzgummer had a great run, too, during the preseason game a couple of years ago. But like I said earlier, I don't think there's going to be a defined number for these positions week to week. Like opening week, they may say 4 running backs, and then another game, they may feel like they need an extra wide receiver, and they go 3. So, yeah, I would lean they go 4 to start the year, but I could certainly see some games where they feel like, well, we need a little bit more help here based off the opponent. But, yeah, I'm leaning 4 to start the year. And I guess if Brightwell's healthy, I'd lean Brightwell, but I could certainly see Corbin beating him out.
Yeah, I don't know how bad his injury is. I know he's missed a few practices now. I don't even know what his injury is. Was it a knee? I think he's got one of them had a knee and one of them had an ankle. I can't remember which one he had. But it was a lower body injury for sure. So, but yeah. All right. JDJ asked, what do you expect from Kayvon in his second year? I know there were a few things Wink said that made it seem like he could give more effort. Is he going to take the superstar leap? All right, this is interesting. I had this conversation also with somebody on the sideline during my practice. We both felt that Kayvon is going to be, he's definitely going to, be better. Now, is he going to be a double-digit sack guy every year? Probably not. But here's what I think the Giants and Kayvon are looking for. Let him be a disruptor. All right? Think in terms of an OCU Manura. You remember OCU Manura?
Of course.
He wasn't a guy that got sacks every week, but he disrupted. And I think, and then when you needed a sack, it just seemed like when you needed a sack at the right moment, there was OC to produce it. That's kind of how I look at maybe the path for Kayvon.
I'm wearing his jersey, so that should tell you what that should tell you what I think about Kayvon. But no, yeah, well, kidding. I'm not going to throw a number out there, but yeah, I think Kayvon's going to be much better this year, and I think he's only going to continue to get better. The work ethic is there. You see it all the time with the clips. He's talking to his teammates on the sideline, trying to get better. Look at the play with Travis Etienne last year where he chased him down 70 yards down the field when we played Jacksonville. The talent's there. You saw glimpses last year where he showed elite capabilities, where he took over the Washington game basically by himself. Yeah, he's super talented, and now he's got more help around him with a healthy Aziz. So you got to think he's going to only be better this year. So, yeah, I have confidence in Kayvon. I don't know what his sack numbers are going to be, but like you said, he's going to be a disruptor. He's going to be a guy that creates pressure. Here's my hot take. The Giants had 41 team sacks last year. They're going to go over 50 this year. I don't know how many Kayvon's going to have, but they're going to have a lot of sacks this year.
I wonder how many times they'll actually call holding when Kayvon gets on the corner, because I swear he could have had double-digit sacks if he wasn't held 5 times a game. They never called that. I swear he got held every time he came around the corner.
Well, he doesn't help himself by protesting and running to the. I have heard and learned over the years that guys that go to run into the officials to cry about holding or pass interference, the officials after a while they're like, yeah, go away. You know,
they all complain about pass interference, and it's when they don't catch it.
yeah, I mean,
all 16-year-olds.
I need to see more snow angels this year. That's what I want to see. I want to see Kayvon doing snow angels all over the football field. So hopefully he gets 12 sacks, 13 sacks.
him and Ojulari, if they're healthy, it could be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And your prediction, by the way, answers Papa Guzzo's question about the defense getting 50-plus sacks. So Papa Guzzo, we got you covered there.
3 a game. I can see that.
Yes. All right. This one is from D. Can we address the annoying notion that DJ was selfish for not taking a pay cut for Saquon? Was Andrew Thomas selfish for not taking a pay cut? I mean, come on. One country doesn't necessarily have to do with another.
I mentioned this.
People say that don't understand the cap. I'm sorry.
The people that, and I'm not, Deke isn't asking this. I mean, it's the media.
No, I know he's not.
How? I know.
No, I'm just saying, how does Daniel Jones know what Saquon Barkley was offered? How does he know that? How does he know anything? He doesn't know what the contract negotiations were with Barkley and Patty. You mentioned this during last season. They were talking with Saquon and this was a big deal during the bye week. Everyone's like, "Oh, they're not bringing Daniel Jones back. They're not talking to Daniel Jones. They're all trying to work with Saquon," because you said it. It's going to be way easier to get Daniel Jones on than Saquon, and you were right. So, I just don't know how Daniel Jones is. What is he supposed to do? Number one, your agent does. You're negotiating, but what's Daniel Jones? No, we're going to offer you 160 with a chance to make 195. Nah, you know what? Give me 120. I'm good for leaving $40 million on the table. I don't know how he's selfish, and I don't know why people are saying he's overpaid. He's going to be right in the middle of the pack by the end of the year. So,
I think people, BadDog, they don't either people are willfully ignorant and they know and they could distinguish the difference between the quarterback market and all of the positions in the league. It's different markets. I've said it before. I think on this show, it's like comparing a doctor's salary to a construction worker. Like a middle of the pack doctor makes more than the highest paid construction worker. It's the most important position. Like people that compare it, it's apples and oranges. It's silliness. And then you had Boomer this week, and this blew my mind on his interview, basically said to Daniel, did you feel bad that you affected Saquon Barkley's ability to be able to make money? And let me tell you, let's go over it. One, after they signed Daniel Jones, they signed Dexter Lawrence to near record-breaking money at the interior defensive line position. They signed Andrew Thomas to record-breaking money at the left tackle position. So they had money to spend. It had nothing to do.
They spent it on a Hurricane and not Nunes Roches. They had the money. Can we just call it for what it is? Saquon's agent, his original agent, screwed up. Let's just call it what it is.
The funniest thing, though, Pat, about that question by Boomer, who did the Giants go to first? Did they go to Daniel first, or did they go to Saquon first?
Saquon.
So
and that's why I say his agent screwed up.
Saquon had the chance to allow the Giants to tag Jones, because I'm going to tell you what, if they would have signed Saquon midseason, they would have had so much more leverage with Daniel Jones, because they could have said to Daniel, you come down to $35 million a year. We're tagging you. Daniel and his agent knew that they had to tag Saquon because Saquon hadn't signed the extension. So they went to Saquon first. So these, like Boomer insinuating that you affected Saquon, nonsense. Saquon got an offer. He turned it down. He rolled the dice and he lost. To blame that on Daniel Jones is ridiculous. And I can't believe it's still a talking point. It's ridiculous.
Boomer is just a jealous has-been.
Who don't understand the cap.
Did anybody ask him, was he greedy, taking all that money from the Jets and ruining the Jets?
Somebody should have.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, how much money did he make with the Jets? I mean, he's a quarterback. That's a dumb question coming from a quarterback. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
I mean,
it's like any job. If you
Daniel Jones should have just walked off the set at that point. I mean, seriously, I would have walked off the set and gone, "Are you serious?"
If you work in an office and you get a raise and your coworker doesn't get the same raise because either you're more important than you have a higher position, or you do better work or whatever the case may be, do you go to your boss, you know what? I don't want the extra $10 an hour, because this is relative for us. We're millions of dollars to them is $10 an hour to 9 to 5 people. But now, you know what? I don't want to. How about you give me $4 an hour and you give the rest of it to the people? Get out of here. You don't have a long shelf life in the NFL. Make your money. That's the way it goes. And Chris, you made a great point. Patty, you did too. They went to Saquon first. How can Daniel Jones know what they offered Saquon? And yeah, they just signed a bunch of other people. How come nobody's saying, oh, do you feel bad, Andrew, about taking more money when Barkley got tagged? Dexter, do you feel bad about taking all that money? No
Let
one's.
me tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you what I think happened with Saquon. All right. This is just, first off, if I remember correctly, I don't think Kim Miali ever negotiated anything with Joe Shane, who is still relatively new, but I don't even know if they had contact when he was in Buffalo as Brandon Beane's assistant. But here's what I think happened. I think Shane sat down with them and said, look, here's what I can do. And probably, if you're the agent, you say, okay, that's your opening offer. You can do better. I know you can do better. And maybe she thought that there was more room to be had. And she's like, nope, sorry, I'm not going to settle for that because I know you can do better. Whereas Shane has always been a straight shooter. He's been transparent. Look, John Mara had a conversation with Saquon. That came out. Joe Shane had a conversation with Saquon. That was obviously, that came out. They basically laid it out on the table. They said, look, Saquon, we want you here. This is what we can do because we want to do this in order to win. And, they laid it out for him. And the agent probably said, you know what? They're full of, what? We're going to hold out and we're going to, put their feet to the fire and we're going to see if we can get more. And they lost that gamble.
She rolled the dice. She called the Giants bluff, and she thought the Giants were going to have to be forced to tag Daniel Jones. That was the gamble that they took. When Shane was able to get the Daniel Jones deal done before the tagline, she lost. You rolled craps. You're done. But for anybody to blame Daniel Jones on it, it's ridiculous. Daniel Jones took average money. Daniel Jones, if you really look at it, took below average money for a starting quarterback. Well, that's just the truth. Because when you look at it, there are 18 quarterbacks in the NFL right now who are not playing on a rookie contract. 18. You don't count the rookie contracts. That's silly. 18 quarterbacks are playing on a non-rookie contract right now. Right now, today, Daniel Jones is the 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL in terms of guaranteed money. And that's only going to go down. Not Justin Herbert. Burrow is going to get paid. Lawrence is going to get paid. Like, there's 3-4 quarterbacks waiting. Tua. Like, the market only goes up. So it's ridiculous. Like, people don't understand the quarterback market. They just don't. Or they literally ignorant.
People are going to blame Daniel Jones for global warming. I mean, why not?
Hey, listen,
blame him for the hangnail you have. I mean, come on.
Chris, we came up with Dr. Garrett. Everybody blamed Garrett for everything wrong with it. And you just mentioned, Jones is a doctor and Saquon's like a construction worker. We're just have to call him Dr. Jones, like Indiana Jones. Because it is. How come Saquon? Listen, how come Saquon? How come they're not saying to Saquon, hey, why were you so greedy? Why were you asking for more money? Why'd you keep asking for more money? They offered you $14 million. How come you wanted more? How come
just to my point about, Saquon's original agent blowing the whole deal and overestimating it, that agency, Rock Nation, put out a press release after Andrew Thomas's signing. And, oh, by the way, whose name was mentioned in that press release? Kim Miali's. So it was kind of like a pat yourself on the back kind of deal. Like, oh, look, see, we might have screwed up Saquon's deal, but look at what we did for Andrew Thomas. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen that.
And by the way,
I've been covering this league for over 30 years. I have never seen an agency come out with a press release with all these factors and stuff like that. Now, maybe they do. I don't know. And I just haven't gotten them. But I was like, wow. And the fact that they said, Rock Nation Sports, it's led by John Thornton, Kim Miali, and Eric, I think, what's his last name, Burkhardt or something like that. I was like, okay. That was a PR thing to say, look, we got Andrew Thomas done, so we're still, competent. Yeah. But look, people screw things up. And I believe that Kim Miali just overestimated everything. She gambled and she lost.
She gambled.
Why
She
do you
gambled.
and why do you think, by the way, Saquon took the unprecedented step of hiring another agent from a different agency to
Karen,
get the contract
it's
done?
pretty
What
it's
does that
pretty
tell
obvious.
you?
Pretty obvious that
Yep.
she wasn't willing to meet
And
them
oh,
where
by
they
the
wanted to
way,
meet.
go back and look at Joe Sheen's presser from the opening of camp when he talks when he gives kudos to Ed Berry for coming up with, working with them on a solution. No mention of the other agent.
Yeah,
So
it's
what does
true.
that tell you?
And by the way, by no means am I trying to slam Barkley. I'm not. I understood where Barkley was coming from too, right? I understood it, but I'm not going to put it on Daniel Jones. I'm not going to put it on
No.
Daniel. It's not Daniel Jones's fault that he went out there and got his contract. And this notion that people have come up with just because they hate Daniel Jones, that by signing Jones it affected Barkley, is the stupidest, dumbest, most naive talking point I've ever heard in my entire life, because they paid Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence record-breaking money. If they wanted to pay Saquon Barkley, they could have paid him. They didn't pay him simply because he's a running back, he's 26, and he has an injury history. And that's not how the Giants want to build long-term. It's pretty simple. It's pretty obvious, but some people don't like to look at the obvious thing. They just want to blame Daniel Jones. So it is what it is.
That's what I mean. How come nobody was blaming Saquon Barkley for asking more? How come nobody's? It's not like they didn't offer him a fair deal. If it was 14, I mean, I don't know what it was. I heard 12 and a half, 13, 14.
He was offered 12 and a half on the first one, and I think the second one before the deadline was applied was up to 14 with incentives, and then the one before the signing deadline, the July 17th deadline, if I'm not mistaken, I think they lowered the APY, but they upped the guaranteed money to the equivalent of the 2 franchise tags. They were never going to go higher than that. They, and I think that's where the holdup was. The Giants were like, okay, we'll go as high as the franchise tag amount for this year and next year as far as guaranteed money goes. I think Saquon's initial representation wanted more, which would have made, I could see where it would make sense, but Shane just wasn't going to go there based on, positional value. And like you said, Dog, how they want to build this team up.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Saquon is one of the most talented players at his position, but everything is supply and demand. Every market in the free world is driven by supply and demand. And Chris made this great point, and I use this all the time because I loved it. It was fantastic. There's no quarterback by committee. You have one quarterback. The old adage is if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. So they're getting their money because the game is different. This is not 1991 where Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith are chewing up the league. It's not the same anymore. Quarterbacks now have the ability to run a lot more than they ever have to. So that takes away a big part of the running game as well, because a quarterback is now a running back. A lot of quarterbacks are running backs. Daniel Jones had 700 yards. Justin Fields had over 1,000 yards. Jalen Hurts had 700 yards. Lamar Jackson, gets a ton of rushing yards. Kyler Murray, the list goes on and on and on and on. So that also takes away from the running backs, position or whatever, the value of the running back, because the quarterback can now get rushing yards. It wasn't like that when Phil Simms was handing off to Joe Morris. It wasn't like that when Joe Montana was giving the ball to Roger Craig.
Tiki Barber.
Right.
He was here.
Right. And that was kind of, Todd Gurley that was kind of the end of it. Todd Gurley got that contract, and we don't want to do this anymore. Running backs don't have a long shelf life in the NFL. They take a beating. Their primes are behind them. By the time they sign that second contract, they're already on a decline. Where quarterbacks, they're still going up into the prime when they get into their early 30s. It's just supply and demand. It's hard to get. Ask the Bears how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback, or the Jets. How many quarterbacks have three top 5 quarterbacks since 2009, right? Sanchez, failure. Darnold, failure. Now Zach Wilson, like, what the hell with you? We're going out there. We're getting Aaron Rodgers. They tried that with Brett Favre. Ask the Jets how hard it is to get one of those or whatever. It ain't easy. They don't grow on trees.
No, they do not.
Daniel Jones got fair money. I know $160 million is We don't know.
Crazy.
Nobody talks.
Stupid money. It's crazy.
About how
And
he
if
got
you-
overpaid.
and if you
Doesn't
look at the
understand how much
contract-
that is.
And if you look at the contract, you really look closely at it, it's 37.5 million per
Yeah.
year
The
because
middle
he's not going to see the last year of that deal.
No, they're going
No.
to extend him or they're
I
going to
mean,
cut him.
come on.
It's the middle.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the pack. So
Yeah.
all
It's middle of the pack, and it's they have the option now. If he outplays it, you rip it up and you do a new deal. If he doesn't, you move on. I mean, what more do people want? I don't understand it.
I don't get it either because these are people that do this. They're in the media. It's a profession. You would think they would understand this
No,
better
not
than
everybody.
just your average YouTube guys. But I have a hard time understanding.
But the thing is, BadDog. The thing is, BadDog. They do realize it. They are willfully ignorant. They choose to ignore it because they know pairing Jones against Barkley is clicks. It's headlines. It gets us talking about it because we can't help it. It's you, it's me. We're passionate as fans. We defend our team when we hear stupid things, but they know that. But you don't think Boomer is smart? I would hope he's smart enough to realize, especially being that he played freaking quarterback
in New York,
that it's apples and oranges. When you talk about the quarterback market versus the running back market, they're smart enough to realize it. They just know that that's not going to generate headlines. That's not going to get people talking about their interviews. So they go for the clickbait topics. That's what they do.
Wouldn't you think that if one of these media people were like contrarian and went the other way and said, like Tiki did when he said Daniel Jones is going to be a top 5 quarterback, that got a ton of attention. Like, wouldn't you want to go the other way and say, you know what?
You know what it is, guys?
He's greedy. You know what? I think Daniel Jones is underpaid. What if somebody were to come out and say, you don't think that would get clicks?
Here's the bottom line.
Call me crazy. I think by year's end, he is going to be underpaid.
This may or may not surprise you. You say you would think that the media would understand it, excluding the regular beat writers who I think do understand it. Do you know how many times over the years I've been on the sidelines during training camp with somebody who's come in from the national media to watch practice? We've had conversations, and they've oh, I don't understand why the Giants did this with this contract. And you guys know me. You know I do a lot of salary cap work, that I have a pretty good understanding of how it works and all that stuff. And I have to explain to them why contracts are set up this way or what the thinking was here. And they argue with me, and I say, look, this is how it was set up. And I have to basically educate them as to why things are the way they are. And I've had to do that this year with Daniel Jones, with a few, the national people that have come in. And they just kind of look at me and they're like, well, Daniel Jones isn't worth it. I'm like, okay, then, are you saying that a franchise quarterback can be had, that they grow on trees? Well, they could have drafted somebody. Okay, coulda, woulda, shoulda, didn't. That's my expression.
Who you drafting?
Exactly. I told her, I said, where did the Giants draft? What were they, 20? I forget now.
Who you drafting? You drafting the mayonnaise guy, the guy that eats bananas?
I think we moved up a spot.
Yeah, they were 24th. I said, who are you drafting at 24? Because now you're getting into the bottom,
25, wherever we were.
I mean, come on. If you're drafting 4th, okay, then I can see the argument.
Well, if you're drafting 4th, Daniel Jones
are hurt or bad.
Yeah, he wasn't worth paying if you drafted 4th.
Exactly.
So I mean, but it's just amazing because I have to sit there and I feel like, come on, you're on this network or that network, and you don't understand this, or you just looking to pick the brain of somebody who does get it, or what are you trying to do here? Or are you just trying to be argumentative?
It's just stupidity. And then you will see people in the national media just completely not take into account the increasing market. Like I saw several people, Colin Cowherd, several people, Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott both got $40 million a year. Okay. Dak Prescott signed his when the cap was $175 million. $40 million a year 3 years ago is not $40 million a year today. $40 million a year 3 years ago was $55 million a year today.
That contract's messed up.
They backloaded the crap out of it and everything else, but people just look at it. It's not comparable. A contract, the market goes up, and it was smart for the Giants to sign Jones when they did.
Exactly.
Because if you tag Jones, let's ignore the one real negative. that it hurts your cap in a negative way this year. So you're not getting Bobby Okereke. You're not going to have a real opportunity to improve your team as best you can this year because you can't move that money around. But the other thing is, if Daniel Jones even plays pretty well, he doesn't even need to be great. If he plays pretty well next year, you make the playoffs again, he puts you in the same situation. You're not in a position to draft a quarterback. You're picking in the 20s again. And then you have an option to either tag him again for like $40 million a year, or if he was worth $40 million in this market and he matched what he did last year as a player, now he's worth 46. So get it out of the way. Like, you would think that, like, you would have learned that lesson. The Cowboys made that mistake with Dak when they tagged him, and they kept pushing back the contract, and then they had to pay him as the highest paid quarterback.
Washington and Kirk Cousins. How many times do they do that with Kirk Cousins? How many times do they tag him?
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't draft the quarterback, and they kept pushing. And it was like he was up to, forgot how much, but they tagged him like 2-3 years in a row. They just kept tagging him, and then he ended up in Minnesota.
Yeah,
so exactly. I didn't think Washington any good either. So
exactly. Yeah. I mean, the business side of football, I think, sometimes escapes some people, and that's why it's just so important to have to me at any rate, because when I make roster projections and predictions and all that stuff, I'm looking at that part. And that's why, some people will say, well, why are you predicting this? And because I'm looking at the business aspect of it. I'm trying to look at it through the eyes of a GM. And, look, it's not for everybody. I get it. And everybody's entitled to an opinion. I get it. But, for myself personally, I'm going to try and be as informed and try and give you as informed a take as I can.
Of course. And I think Doug brings up the best point in terms of people that were against paying Daniel Jones this year, even though, in my opinion, there was no other realistic option. There just wasn't, based on where we were picking. Like, that was what you had to do. Name me a team, Doug, in the history of football that made the playoffs and we're picking in the 20s and had a young quarterback not coming off an injury and replaced him with either a really cheap veteran, like some people were suggesting, like Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, whatever. It doesn't happen. So you were keeping Daniel Jones. The question was, were you going to tag him or were you going to sign him to the extension? But what the Giants did, in my opinion, and why it was the right approach, they didn't commit to him long term. This is not in my opinion, at least, this is not a franchise quarterback contract. This is we're going to give you the chance to prove you could be a franchise quarterback contract. They didn't backload this salary like the Jalen Hurts deal. Jalen Hurts, if Jalen Hurts gets hurt or if he regresses in play, the Eagles are screwed. They're committed to him for the next 7 years with the way they backloaded that contract. That's a franchise quarterback contract. That's committing yourself to a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. The Giants, another one.
Herbert. The Giants are saying, Jones, we're going to give you 2 years here. We're going to build this team up right. We believe in you. And if you become what we think you can be, then you're going to get the franchise quarterback contract.
Exactly.
But this is a bridge. This is a bridge contract, is what this is.
It's a bridge contract.
That's perfect. Exactly. You hit it on the head, dog. It's a bridge contract. And if he outplays it, you rip it up and you give him a franchise contract. Yeah. If he doesn't, and he'll still be young enough. He's 26 now. So you figure after 2 years, he'll be 28. He'll still be, in the prime years of his career. Quarterbacks tend to get even better as they approach 30 in their early 30s. Yeah. Absolutely.
And Daniel Jones can talk a little trash, as you saw in the Hugo Boss when he told that Eagles fan, I'm sure you disappointed your mother before that.
That was great.
Time to take a dig at an Eagles fan. Listen, Eagles, Packers, are we just picking random teams here?
Yeah, seriously. All right, listen, everybody. I got to take my final commercial break. When we come back, more of your questions, pop them in the chat box, and we will get to them after this message. Hey, Giant fans, our partner at eBay Motors has teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're preparing for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. And if you're looking for a safe quarterback to take as a starter late after you wait on the position, then you can ride with the Seahawks' Geno Smith, who was the biggest surprise fantasy quarterback in 2022 and taking over for Russell Wilson. Smith took advantage of a great system under Shane Waldron and was a perfect fit with top wideouts DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Smith is back with Waldron and now has rookie dynamo Jackson Smith-Njigba too, and he is established as a solid option. And Giant fans, if you're looking for a guaranteed fit for your vehicle, you need to check out eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure that it's the right fit for your car because eBay's guaranteed fit helps you to understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle. So go for it, switch gears, crank up the AC, and say goodbye to sweating when your ride needs a little fixing up. Because with eBay's guaranteed fit, everything you need for your vehicle is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Locked On Giants Live, Entertainah and BadDog. And we are just cranking it up here. Speaking of driving, that was a long drive on Daniel Jones, but my gosh, does that bring out, the passion?
I can't help it. He brought up the question.
I don't blame you. I don't understand why you would want to pit one teammate against the other. It doesn't make sense. But
it's stupid, but I understand it.
I get it too. Look, it's clickbait. I get it. I mean, look, I run a site where page views are important, but I'm not going to stoop to clickbait, if I can help it at any rate. But anyway, let's get to some of these other questions. Let me see. Let's get to this one from Marky Fresh. What do you think the wide receiver group will look like going into the season? I don't think Shep is going to make it, and I think Beasley will.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. I think we were all in agreement that we think both those guys will. And that's taken into account that Wan'Dale, we think, probably won't start the year.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still not sure about, if they go with 6 or 7. I know somebody asked me today, would they consider going with 8? And I think 8 would be too much.
No, I can't
But
see
I
that.
think, but again, it's going to depend on injuries because if they want to put somebody on short-term IR, they're going to have to put them on the initial 53-man roster. So, still a little too early. And I know I've been getting a lot of those questions over from my subtext community people. They're like, oh, how many guys do you think will make it at this thing? Still a little too early for me to do a final roster projection, but that's coming, guys. We're going to do one of those on the show. I might even take that one live
I'm gonna do one of those too on my channel. Probably
I might do it live. I think that would be fun, or maybe just do a round table. That would be kind of cool if we do like a round table. Maybe I'll see if Nick Filato will hop on. We could do a round table. That would be a lot of fun, I think. So, all right, let's see. James Vegas, who do you think has the higher upside, Banks or Hawkins?
Banks.
Well, I would say Hawkins, given that Hawkins was a lower pick, and from a smaller school.
Well, if we're talking about that, like in terms of what could be the better value pick, but if we're, in my opinion at least, and I'm very curious to hear your opinion on this, in terms of who has the potential to be an upper echelon corner in the NFL, who's more likely? Banks. It's Banks. Right. If that's what the question's about. That's how I interpreted the question.
Okay, I interpreted it in terms of value.
That's different. I agree. It's Hawkins then. I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We're not going to mention the Yankees because we don't want to get BadDog started.
I just finished watching. They got shut out again. So back-to-back shutouts.
Yeah. Neil had this little saying here about the Yankees getting. By the way, BadDog, some of your words, man.
This is the latest they've been under 500 since 1992. So tells you all you need to know about this team.
All right, here's an interesting one that I think we haven't touched on. Carl Banks' prediction with for Azeez Ojulari having 15 sacks. What do you think, guys? Can you see somebody? I think
Carl reached a little there.
I think so too. And Wink's system, I think, has Wink ever had a guy get 15 sacks?
He's never had a guy get double-digit sacks.
I was going to say, I don't recall that ever being the case.
Yeah, if he got half of that, I'd be really happy.
Right, and that goes back to an earlier question we had about Thibodeaux and what the expectations are. That's why I don't think he's going to be, necessarily a double-digit sack guy. I mean, if he does, it'll be a low double-digit, but disruption is what it's all about, I think.
Hey, listen, I respect the hell out of Carl. Great guy, came on my channel. Obviously, a Giant legend. He definitely knows what he's talking about. And
Sure
he's not,
does.
and he's never scared to share his opinion. He gives several takes that is not always Giant friendly. And I remember he came on my channel. He didn't just say Daniel Jones was a top 10 quarterback. He said he was a top 8 quarterback last
Yep.
year. And a lot of people in my chat gave him hell for that. But he's not scared to share his opinion. He's going to tell you how he feels.
Yep.
So I'm going to respect what he has to say. He knows more about these players than I do, for damn sure. But if I'm thinking realistically, in my opinion, if you ask me, no, I'm not. When you factor in that Aziz has had injury troubles, when you factor in Wink's scheme doesn't, necessarily lend itself to high individual sack totals because of the type of scheme that he runs, I'm not going to go into the year with those expectations. What I will say, I do think Aziz could consistently be a guy that hovers around double-digit sacks if he could ever stay on the football field. He's got the talent. He's got to stay healthy, but 15 is a lofty number.
I think that if Aziz was a pure pass rusher, I think that's doable if he's healthy. 17 games, 15 sacks. Pure pass rusher, if that was his one job, just go get if Wink said to him, just go get the quarterback. Just go. I think maybe. 15's a lot of sacks. It's not that Ojulari doesn't have the talent.
That's lead the league type numbers, BadDog.
But that is like top of the top. Like a lot of, there's not many guys that get 15 sacks these days anymore. I hope Carl's right. That'd be amazing.
I would love it personally. But by the way, Dog, I think you'll appreciate this. Do you remember how we talked about how I suspected Aziz was doing a little too much with the workouts and that was contributing to it? I finally got him, when he was coming off the podium I think it was a couple weeks ago, pulled him over. I said, Aziz, I got to ask you something. Because, that was when he was talking about doing yoga and stretching and all that stuff.
Good,
I said, I got to ask you about your weightlifting. I said, last year, did you put on all that muscle because you wanted to or because a coach told you to? And he basically said, well, I was working out, 3 times a day and I just got big. And I got the impression that he just got big without realizing he was getting big. It was like one morning, you kind of look in the mirror and you go, oh, wow, look, I got big, And so I followed that up. I said, now that you have a strength and conditioning coach in here, what did he tell you? Did he tell you to maintain that? Or did he tell you to maybe back off a little bit? And he told me that he was in a different weightlifting group this year, that he was in one group lower than he was the previous year. So just a little tidbit there. BadDog, you'll probably understand what that means a little bit better than I would. But I had that theory for the longest time that maybe Aziz was just working out, maybe not as in tune with what he needed to be in tune with. And he just got big all of a sudden, and the body just wasn't accommodating.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between being gym strong and being, football strength. You need to be flexible. I mean, when you're a bodybuilder, you just lift weights and you do what I'm not these football players, but I bust my ass in the gym. But I go to work every day and I just sit on my computer and do a lot of typing. And get up and walk around, go back and do more typing. I'm not doing anything strenuous work. I'm not shifting gears, getting hitting. I'm not doing any of that. So, like I talk about this with Giancarlo Stanton with the Yankees too, because his legs are gone and it's obvious. It's sad. Giancarlo Stanton is built like a Greek god. So, strong like ox and flexible as board. That's what Aziz was. Board's not flexible. So, yeah, you need to strengthen different muscles to play football. I talk about this all the time. Like Saquon, if he held out, he could work out every day, get strong. But there's a difference between being in shape in the weight room and being in shape in the football field. You got to kind of find the balance. So hopefully Aziz did. Sometimes these guys do put on too much muscle. It's easy to pull muscles when you have no flexibility. So hopefully it works for him. The guy is going to be strong as hell anyway. But I'd rather a guy like Aziz Ojulari work on athleticism, flexibility, and speed. He's going to be starting off. He's 6'3", 250, whatever he is. I mean, a guy doesn't need to be 6'3", 265. He's not a lineman. Right. So hopefully it works out. I would love him to be healthy. He's one of my favorite guys. And I think he and Kayvon played one game together last year. I want to see them. I want to see what they can do as a tandem.
Yeah. Yeah. But I had to ask that question of him because I had that theory, as you know, I've expressed it on the show. and basically he confirmed my theory. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. All right. Mark B wants to know what's up with Bryce Ford-Wheaton with that poor performance in preseason, and does he make the cut? Does he make the cut? No. But to answer your question about the poor performance, that was kind of the knack against Bryce Ford-Wheaton coming into the pros. There's a reason why a guy doesn't get drafted, and one of the knocks against him was his inconsistent hands. And, despite having this wonderful catch radius, I don't remember what his drop percentage was, but that was one of the, stains on his resume, if you will. So,
Yeah.
and we saw it again. We saw it again, in the preseason. And, I know there was a lot of, a lot of fanfare about him. Oh, they guaranteed him all this money. I think they'd like to develop him and, have him grow in their system. But yeah, I don't see him making the 53.
Yeah, when they picked him up, I viewed him as like a more intriguing David Sills, like a guy that you stash on the practice squad for a few years with potential. Like David Sills, he doesn't have like any real potential in terms of being a guy that could morph into a legitimate starting receiver in the NFL. This guy at least does. He's got height like Sills, but he's obviously very athletic the way that he profiles. But he's obviously a guy that was a very raw wide receiver. And yeah, and especially with the talent that we brought in this wide receiver room this offseason, like Cole Beasley's been a good wide receiver in the NFL for a long time. Jamison Crowder's been a good wide receiver in the NFL for a long time. Sterling Shepard, these guys aren't superstars, but they're guys that are going to stick on rosters if they're healthy. So I knew Bryce Ford-Wheaton wasn't making this team. I think he's a guy that you hope doesn't get claimed anywhere, and based off the way he played in his first preseason game, he probably won't. And you stash him on the practice squad, and you try to develop him over 2 or 3 years. I think that's the Giants' plan with him.
There's a difference between performing well at the Underwear Olympics, which is the combine, and performing on an NFL field against NFL competition. It's way different catching a ball without coverage in a controlled environment as opposed to guys banging you going over the middle. Here comes the safety, brace for the hit, make sure you catch the ball. Well, it's a way different animal. So yeah, guys can have all the athleticism in the world, but like I was just talking about with Azeez Ojulari, you can have all the strength in the world. It doesn't make you a good football player. You can have all the speed in the world. I mean, how many times did the Raiders go out and get this started way back with James Jett in the early 90s and Darius Hayward-Bay and all these other guys that just ran 4.3s, but they never ended up being good wide receivers because all they could do was run. There's so many things that go into making you a really good football player, not just one aspect where you're better than most of the league, because everybody at this level is fast. But you have to do – there's intangibles. Like Cole Beasley is a perfect example. Cole Beasley is not the fastest guy, biggest guy, strongest guy, but he does what he has to do. Phil McConnell was the Giants in '86.
I'm going to tell you what. When we picked up Beasley, I was like, whatever. That's a whatever move. Didn't even make a video about it. Didn't talk about it. I think Beasley's going to have a big impact week 1. I think Beasley's going to have a big impact week 1 because I look at the Dallas Cowboys as a team. They have a great pass rush, right? They have good corners on the outside, right? I think the way you attack that team is over the middle, on the slot, get the ball out fast. Beasley creates quick separation. I'm not saying he's going to have 120 yards, but I think week 1 against Dallas, I think he's going to have a bigger role than some fans may realize going into the year. I think Beasley's going to be pretty heavily involved in that Dallas Cowboys game. I really believe that.
I think Waller is too. I think Waller because again, when your line isn't the best and those cornerbacks, I mean, we'll see about these wide receivers, but we know since Daniel Jones has gotten there, one of the big knocks of the guys that want to defend it, have defended Daniel Jones for years, say, well, the receivers get no separation. So if your receivers aren't getting any separation, the safety blanket's always the tight end. We know this playing Dallas for years. Jason Witten used to kill us, and Jason Witten was not the biggest, he was big, but he wasn't fast. He wasn't athletic, but he was big. He ran his route, and he caught the ball, and he killed us for years. So Darren Waller could definitely be that guy, especially on those play-action passes, which that's the biggest thing for me is what Darren Waller can do when defenses have to hesitate, especially if the Giants can run the ball with Barkley. You got to worry about, is Barkley getting it? Is Jones taking off with it? Where are we going? Oh, shoot, he's throwing it over the middle of Darren Waller. So there's just a lot more options for the Giants on offense this year going against Dallas. And, knock on wood, this is week 1. They should all be fresh, healthy, and ready to go. So it's going to be a much different team this year that Dallas is going to see. Got to win that game. I'm pumped.
NetLife's going to be rocking that night. NetLife is going to be rocking.
I can't wait.
It's going to be loud and rocking. I can't wait either. I've got to make my hotel reservation for that night game, by the way. I still haven't done it. I don't know why, but anyway. Christy asked, what's Aaron Robinson's status? Very little talk about him. He's on PUP. No timetable as to when he's going to come back. The longer they sit on PUP, the less likely they're going to be on the 53-man roster. He'll probably get moved from active PUP to inactive PUP would be my guess. So
I don't want him to be rushed back. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't think you need to rush it back at this point, because you've got, unless there's an injury somewhere along the line, and then if he's ready.
Even then I don't, Patty. He's young. I don't want to mess with him.
Yeah,
Ease him back in.
Just let him, let him take his time to come back. They've got guys that they can continue developing. So I think Aaron Robinson's going to start the season on PUP. I really do. I don't think they activate him just yet, but we'll see. According to Daboll, everybody's at different spots, and we'll see how it goes. I thought DJ Davidson would stay on PUP, but depends on their rehab, I guess.
Yeah.
So okay. Doug Analytics asks this question: have there been any assistant coaches calling plays in camp or preseason? Doug, no. But what they do is they all have headsets so they can hear the calls. So if you want to consider that as, coaches in training, that's how they're kind of approaching it. Like you'll see a lot of the assistant coaches have, headsets hooked up to Kafka, if it's the offensive assistant coaches, or the defensive assistant coaches will be hooked up to Martindale. So that's kind of how they work it. But no, they haven't been.
That's a good question by Doug. I forgot what preseason game I was watching the other day. It was on NFL Network. I think it was on Saturday, and that's what they did. They let the assistant coaches call the game. They let the OCs.
To my knowledge, no.
I don't think the Giants have done it.
They have the headsets though. That I know, and because I remember asking somebody about that, and they're trying. Maybe that was the case in the earlier on, like in the OTAs or stuff, but. No, now that we're getting down to crunch time, it's like, okay, let's get it going here. So yeah, that's my understanding of it. Anyway, all right, let's see. BJ Tico asks, how many players do you think the Giants will claim off the waiver wire? BJ, it depends. Let's see who gets cut. It's too early to answer that question, in my opinion. To put a number on it, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they claim 5. Because remember, you also, when you're claiming guys off the waiver wire, depending on how many years experience they have, you're claiming their contracts, and that's going to go against your cap. So you can't go crazy. All right. Yeah. So, and guys
half the time, I know this from doing videos on YouTube, because I used to make videos of that, the guys that they would claim, right after cuts around the league. Half the time, half those guys don't even make the opening day roster. Like they claim them because they're back end of the guy, roster guys. So they come and they compete.
They count, if they're on the roster for the first week, they count the salary is guaranteed.
I think they'll pick up a few players though. I think they'll kick the can.
There'll be a couple. There will definitely be some, but I don't think they'll go crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think you have to see what the roster looks like when you make the cut downs, and then who becomes available. You can't just go out there and say, oh, they're going to take 10 players and claim them. I think the Giants did that a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, and it was surprising. They claimed a lot of guys, and that was more of an indication of the deficiencies of the roster at the time. So
Mark's got a really good question. Get to him next, because I'm curious to get your take on the captains. But let's answer this one.
Okay,
first.
All right. I want to get to Davies, because Davies asked us a few times now. He wants to know anything new on Lemieux. Lemieux's been working with 2s and 3s for the most part. I don't really remember seeing him a whole lot with the 1s. So,
I think he's getting cut.
I would not be surprised. All right. Now let me see. You said Mark had a question.
Mark B. Yeah, he says, Patty, when do the players vote for captains, and when do they give up?
All right, that's coming up. I think the first week of I think they do it right after the initial 53 is set. So
I want to get your prediction for captains. Like last year, let me think who the captains were. It was Andrew Thomas. It was Saquon Barkley. It was Daniel Jones. It was Xavier McKinney. It was
Dexter.
It was Dexter. And was it Leo?
Leo, I think. Yeah. And then on specials, it was Cam Brown and Gano, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. All right, I'll go first. I think it's the same three on offense. I think it's Jones, Barkley, and Andrew Thomas. Dex is clearly going to be a captain. I will be interested to see if McKinney loses the captain's badge based off of what happened last year with the ATV in season. I'm not saying he's gonna, but interesting to see.
Who would you replace then?
Oh, Karake could middle, in the middle, man in the middle, linebacker. I know he's the first year here, but I could see him getting that honor. Leo, I think will get it again. I think the only one in terms of if I'm excluding special teams. The only one who I could see maybe not getting the captain's badge back would be McKinney. I'm leaning he will, but if he does not, I would guess Okereke would get it.
And I think we agree that Cam Brown will probably not be on the roster, and he was a captain last year.
Yeah.
So who do you think swap? Do you go with McFadden? Do you go with Carter Coughlin? Who do you go with there? Do you go with maybe Kreider?
Kreider, that's an out of the box one. I don't hate that one. That's pretty good. I like that one. Our special teams are so bad. Our special teams are so bad. Yeah. I'm trying to think who they would give it to. I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know.
All right. Big Moo asked about how many guys on the practice squad can be protected each week. Moo, they got rid of that rule. I think that was just during the pandemic. I don't think they have that rule anymore. So,
they got rid of it completely.
Yeah, I think they got rid of it because I don't remember them protecting guys last year.
Okay.
So I think it was just during the pandemic that they had that. All right. Christy asked Shane making any last-ditch attempts at a Leo extension. Probably not. Just how his contract is set up. They wouldn't get that big of an amount of relief. So I don't think so.
This has to be Leo's last year as a Giant, right?
I think that's a possibility. I mean, I keep saying if they need to clear money out, they can maybe look at Tyrod Taylor extending him.
Mm-hmm.
They can, I don't know that Darnay Holmes is going to make this roster. So there's about $3 million there that they can save. So yeah, there are other places they can get money. Right now, they're not in horrible shape. I think they have just over 5 million, I want to say. But and it's that number's going to change once cuts are made and they get, veteran contracts are terminated and these 1 year veteran minimum deals revert back. So that'll change. So we'll have to see what the number looks like, and then I can maybe do an article or a show on where they can get more cap money if they need it. But I don't think it's going to come from Leo.
I would love to have Leo back. I just with the increasing interior defensive line market and where I think we're gonna, McKinney, Barkley, unless he's willing to take a big discount. Where if you're Leonard, why would you? I mean, he may say he loves playing here, he loves playing next to Dex, but you're 30 years old, dude. Like you got to cash in. I just don't see it. I don't think he'll be back after this year. I hope I'm wrong. I love Leo.
And by the way, Big Moo asked this. There's only one cut down date. I think I don't remember the exact date, but it's like, I want to say, is it the Tuesday after? I don't remember the exact date. I'd have to look at a calendar, but I want to say, is it the 29th?
I know. I think you just said it. I know 29th. They only have 1 day now. I know that.
Yeah, it's 1 day. So
yeah.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, I just looked it up. You're right. It's the 29th.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a few more questions. Playoff P wants to know, is Waller somebody that you might see as a captain?
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, if they only go to 3,
I don't think so. Not this year.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't rule it out, but then what are you going to do? You're going to have 4 captains on offense? I just don't think that's. Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you revoke the badge from Thomas, Jones, or Barkley? And I'll tell you what, if they were going to give an honorary captain to somebody and wasn't one of those 3, I would give it to Shep. Shep's been here the longest. He's a team guy. That's who I'd give it to. Like if you were going to take one away from because when you think captain, you're not necessarily thinking the best player in the team. Nick Gates was a captain because he was a guy that the team rallied behind and so on and so forth. So I would go Shep before Darren Waller.
Yeah. Okay, let me get one in here from Papa Guzzo. How long will our starters play on It's actually Friday, right? The game's Friday, isn't it?
Yes, Friday.
Okay. Yeah. You scared me there, Papa Guzzo. I'm like, wait a minute. My guess is if the starters play, and I do think they will play, you will see some of them for maybe a couple of series. Some of them may play a full quarter. I think the Jet game is going to be the dress rehearsal because the Jets, that's a pretty good team on both sides of the ball. So that would be a really good litmus test, I think, ahead of the regular season opener. That would be my guess.
The thing is, Patty, we play them during the regular season, so would they?
That's good.
Like,
that's a good point.
A difference.
Oh, that's a good point. But I'm talking. You would be vanilla though.
I think it's vanilla playbook, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's but I get BadDog's point too. You don't want to show him too much.
No, that is a good point. I mean, you would think theoretically, now that you
I'm actually surprised, to be honest with you. And I know we play the Jets every year in the preseason, but you would think on a year where we play them in the regular season, you'd substitute somebody else.
They usually substituted the Patriots.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think the Patriots pulled out of
is that what happened?
I think that's what happened. I don't know why.
Is it because of Joe Judge?
No,
might be.
I don't know if it was Joe Judge
this year, so
I had heard it was because the Giants and the Patriots are going to play each other in the regular season, and that's what I had heard. So.
That's right. We play them too. Yeah.
But the Giant Jet game is kind of locked in. So, I mean, I guess it's a local ratings bonanza.
Cleveland
it's also a pain in the neck from a media perspective, but it is what it is. So what are you going to do, right?
And Cleveland, they could have used a team from or maybe Pittsburgh. Like you would think they would have just went with another, I don't know,
local team, somewhat local team.
Yeah. So, all right, let me see if we have any other questions, and then if not, we'll wrap it up because we've been going on for 2.5 hours, which time has flown, by the way.
Oh, it was great. Great.
But I know I've got to get some articles done for tomorrow's morning. So let me see if we have anything else. Okay, what's this from Lloyd? Lloyd Goldstein asks, ESPN ranks our interior defensive line number 1. Do you see that? And our O-line last year was nowhere near number 1. Yeah, I agree with that part. The interior defensive line, Dexter Lawrence, man. I mean, one of the best young players in the interior defensive line. Would you guys put Dexter in the same breath as Aaron Donald, who's clearly
at this point? At this point I might not for his career, but Aaron Donald's getting older. Yeah, at this point
you said no.
Maybe at this point in their careers, maybe. But how many? I've never seen.
For Aaron Donald, one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah. So maybe they're
in terms of impact,
now, but.
In terms of impact, we're talking about the present. Would you say
in the present? I think that you could. He's in the conversation. You got. I mean, you got Chris Jones, you got Quinnen Williams, you got Dex. Those are the, and of course Aaron Donald.
This is his 10th year in the league, so he's getting up there. But maybe now. But like when I hear any comparison to Aaron Donald, I got. I don't want to
the guy's one of the.
I love any comparison to Lawrence Taylor, right? People that say
no
Aaron Donald, Lawrence Taylor.
No, we can't do
come
that.
on.
Nobody.
And to answer is, I don't know if I'd have to really look around the league to give you a good answer there. But I will say we have one of the better interior defensive.
Top 5, I think.
Yeah. Our defensive line is our biggest strength, probably on our team. I would say it's our biggest strength. So, it's definitely, I would venture to guess a top 5 unit. We have a great interior defensive line. Like you said, Dexter Lawrence is a second-team All-Pro, and he's only going to get better. Leonard Williams, people forget about, is damn good. He was just banged up last year. You add some really quality depth. A'Shawn Robinson, when he's on the field, is really good. Nacho's a pretty good player. It's one of the better interior defensive lines for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think that'll probably do that. Yeah. It looks like we went through all the questions. I know some of you asked questions that we've already covered. So if we didn't get to a question, you guys know what to do. Just send them to me and I'll pop them in, on a show or something in a segment. But so it was great to get caught up. The next few weeks, we'll see how the roster plays out, and we'll see if we can't get together and do a roster prediction roundtable. I think that would be kind of fun, right?
That would be awesome.
And also for those who don't know, BadDog asked me to be on his show, so I'm excited. I'm going to make my debut on BadDog's.
Awesome.
Yes. And of course, Chris, you know the invitation's always open.
Of course.
Yes.
Yep.
So
24-hour stream. So I'm trying to load up. I'm trying to get as many guests as I can. I got about, I'd say 7 people. I think it's 7. These 2, if Chris comes on, Patty. Chris,
Yeah, I'll try to
the
pop on.
guys I do the round table with, that'd be 5. Philly 500, 6. Trevor from Laker Nation, 7. And then I'll mention that, but Tom Grassi might be 8. So that's
Nice.
a pretty good lineup of people. And obviously, if you don't know, I do these 24-hour streams, and half of whatever I get during the 24-hour stream, I always donate to charity. We're doing a Stand Up to Cancer. So whatever I get through 24 hours, I'm donating 50% to Stand Up to Cancer. So let's kick some ass.
as a cancer survivor, I thank you, dog.
Yeah, of course.
It.
That's why I was like, Patty be perfect because she's kicking cancer's ass. Like, we're going to kick Dallas's ass week 1. That's right. Let's go. But it's always fun. I love the challenge.
If for no other reason, you'll be bouncing off the wall the following week. That alone.
Oh, God, yeah, of course.
Oh, man, this is great. All right. Well, anyway, okay, David asked what time I'll be on BadDog's show. David, it depends on what time I get done with Saturday media obligations. We got Daboll, and then I've got to do my writing, obviously. But I'll text or I'll DM BadDog and kind of find out, when I can come on. But at some point, I would think probably Saturday night. I would think. I mean, Dog, I don't know if you've got a structure as to how you do.
I really don't. I've told everybody, listen, I'm there for 24 hours. So whenever you pop in, if it's for 10 minutes, awesome. If it's for an hour, awesome. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to stop in and it'll be fun. I've never been on Dog Show, but I'm really excited to do it. And we'll
slander the Eagles the whole time, Patty. We'll just make one of the Eagles.
Oh, you'll have me rolling on the floor of laughter, man. That or your Yankees fans. They were epic. Holy smokes.
Oh God.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Locked On Giants Live. This was an absolute blast. I hope you all had as good of a time as I did. You got, again, Traina and Dog. We will do this again, I'm sure, maybe in a couple weeks as we get closer to the roster cutdown. Maybe we do a roster roundtable show prediction. We'll figure it out. But thank you all for coming on, and have a good night, everybody. We'll see you again soon.